it just shows you how big the depth is in South Africa. It shows you how many good players there are. You look at some of the players on the standby list, for example, and you think, how can they not be in the Springboks squad? But you also then look at the squad and you think, well, who are they going to replace? And that becomes the problem, isn't it? So it's an interesting one. And very interesting to see everybody's thoughts. So first things first, I'm going to put a poll in the comments saying, do you like the Springbok squad? Yes or no? Simple yes or no. And if you don't, let me know some of the players that you think have been snubbed, for example, and who might be in the squad and who you think they should replace. That's also the important thing for me to make, is that don't just say Albert Lowe has to be in the squad. Ahead of who? Because that's the problem, isn't it? Because I know that he's going to be one that a lot of people are going to talk about. So let's go through it, shall we? And what we're going to do is we're going to go through the different parts of the squad, the forwards, the backs, and then we're going to look at the standby list, which is for an interesting one as well, which is mainly basically the players who were in the original squad that don't make the sort of final squad. Nobody's really been dropped completely out of the entire sort of the mix. So that is probably the important part over there. Right, shall we start with the forwards? Let's have a look, shall we? This is the forwards that have been named 22 and that have been named. The big surprise there for me is Jan-Hendrik Wessels. Gerard Steenekamp, somebody I didn't really mention much in the uploaded video, which has gone up already. But he's also been called up, as has Jan Pobela. So in that sort of forward pack there, the only uncapped player is, I think it's Pepsi Buthelezi is uncapped, and Jan-Hendrik Wessels is uncapped. There are 4 uncapped players in the squad, by the way. Morne van den Berg and... who's the other one? Morne van den Berg and there's another forward, actually. There are four uncapped players in the squad. In fact, actually, it could be another. Jan Pobela is capped, I'm pretty sure. Trying to be back. And the reason I say that is because they're busy having an argument on the Springbok WhatsApp group as to who the uncapped players are. It's Jan-Hendrik Wessels. I'm pretty sure Jan Pobela's got a cap. Morne van den Berg doesn't have a cap. Pepsi Buthelezi doesn't have a cap. Okay, well, we'll get to it anyway. For example, Jan Pobela doesn't have a cap, by the way. Oh, yeah, he got injured. He was in the squad and then he didn't get to have a cap. So let's have a look at the squad, shall we? Pepsi Buthelezi, I think that's quite a surprise inclusion. I think that very much covering number 6 rather than number 8, although there is an option at 8. But I think it's the fact that he can cover 6 as well, which really puts him into that squad ahead of somebody like an Ulrich Lowe, for example. If we look at the rest of the squad, it's pretty straightforward. I'm very glad to see Thomas du Toit in there. A lot of people complaining about Wilco Lowe. Thomas du Toit playing, I think, loose head and tight head, does set him apart. And he's had a sensational season. He was one of the best players in the Premiership. And it's a great... it's a great reward for him because he missed out on the World Cup. And I think that you would talk about players who've been around that box squad for a long time, never really always had his chance. And I think he made the brave decision to leave the Sharks, to leave his comfort zone, go to the Premiership, which sometimes can mean really sacrificing your international aspirations, because a lot of the squad often gets picked from South Africa, and obviously, the lineman camps, for example, all in South Africa. And for players who are on the fringes, for example, they risk potentially falling out of the setup if they do go overseas. I think players who are very well established, like a Sia Khaleesi, he can go anywhere, and he's going to get picked regardless of where he goes. He could go and play in Germany, and he'd probably get picked. But I think he was a bit of a fringe player, and I think he kind of maybe even made peace with the fact that maybe he's not going to get picked, and decided, right, I'm going to go to the Premiership, going to make that move. It was going to be a decent money move, and look how it's paid off for him. It's actually put him so much more on the Springbok radar than I think it ever has been. So it's a brave move for him, and I think it's really stood out there. I think he's made the best of it. Apart from that, Tsiaklisi, Trevor Nyakane back. Yeah, no issue there. Trevor, I mean, played in the World Cup final, had a couple of massive scrums. Has been such an important player for the Boks over the past few years. I mean, that British and Irish Lions series, you think when he came off the bench, almost single-handedly won us the game with those couple of late scrum penalties. As a similar kind of thing to an Oxen chair. Sal Murat is an interesting inclusion. Ruben van Heerden, by the way, we'll talk about the standby list, has been called up as well. So we'll talk about him in a bit. But Sal Murat, for me, was always going to stay in the squad because we are short on locks at the moment. Archie Sneman officially back into the mix there. So it'll be interesting to see. I think we're going to see Eben Etzebeth and next to Frankie Moss as a starter. Archie Sneman probably off the bench. Sal Murat, I'll be surprised if he does face Ireland. I don't think we'll necessarily go sort of 6-2-7-1 split over there against them. Apart from that, no sort of real surprises. Apart from those sort of players at the bottom there. Johan Kroblock coming in. He's been on the radar for a while. Was told to basically bulk up a little bit. That he was a bit small a few years ago when he first got his call up. So I think that he has done that, to be fair. He has bulked up and he's a bit of a bigger player. And he's had a great season for the Bulls. A player which surprised me, I mean, I'm not massively surprised by Chaos Camp. You know, Steven Kitsov being injured means we do need an extra loose head. And so he gets the call-up. He's been involved in the system. Jan-Hendrik Wessels really surprised me. And I'm a bit of a difficult one when it comes into the Jan-Hendrik Wessels chat. Because I can understand the talent from a young age. We've seen him and the potential he's had. He's not done it yet for me, really, on this level. You know, you look at his minutes, for example. I think it's like less than 400 minutes he played during the season. I mean, Peter Matanzima, for example, actually played more minutes than him. I don't think he's a phenomenal scrummager, and I think that his line-out work, for example, still is yet to make him a standout hooker. So you talk about utility players. I worry about him as being a player who's, because he's been moved around, is not settled into either position particularly well. And I think that could potentially be an issue. So I'm surprised a bit by that selection ahead of somebody like an Andrew Hugo Fento, who I think they highly rate. But I suppose again, number 1 and 2. I think the main thing is that it's a big squad. It's 39 players. And there are standby players, and I think that he's someone that they don't view as playing against Ireland. Might get a cap against Portugal, for example. But that, for me, I think is probably the big thing. Is he's a bit of a project player. The last time he actually played, Hendrik Wessels, was actually Northampton in those quarterfinals, where he came off the bench 21 minutes. So yeah, I think it is a bit of a strange. That's probably the biggest strange selection with regards to somebody who's not been playing a lot of rugby and not been. I mean, everybody talks about the outrage of Jordan Hendrickse when you think that, you know, how was he being picked as the second choice fly half? He played 1,100 minutes this season, played almost as many minutes as Sinan Humber did. Whereas you've got Andrew Wessels who's made the squad playing 362 minutes, doesn't make the 23, is not within the top 2 best hookers at the Union, and not within the top 2 best props, because he's been behind Spima Matanzima as well as Karas Dennekamp for most of the season as well. So yeah, I think that's a bit of a strange one. Jasper Wiese is in the squad. He is banned currently, but will become available, and so will train with the squad. I think that he will be the starting number 8 when we take on the All Blacks, for example. I'll be very surprised if he's not. But Evan Lewis gets a bit of an inside run during that Ireland squad. So a nice opportunity for him as well there. Let's go to some of the comments and talk about what everybody's got to say over here. So Michael saying BJ Dixon's going to be a workhorse, the engineer. Yeah, I'm not surprised he's been recalled. He's been retained at all. I think he is Peter Steph Toy-esque in the way he plays. Very physical, very mobile around that park. Incredible work rate. I think he ticks the box for everything. When the Springbok managed to sit down and they talk about players' attributes that they want, I think that they basically just sum up Ben Jason Dixon. You know, hardworking, grafter. They talk about those battle stats. You know, how many battle stats do you have? How many rucks are you hitting? How many tackles are you making? How dominant are those tackles? When you got the ball, how many hits are you making? Are you getting over the gain line, for example? You know, and he is one of those players who I think just has so many battle stats and really good battle stats as well. Kenneth from Mark says, what should Wilco Lowe do to be recalled? Well, he has been recalled. He's not like, I mean, he's not in the squad, but he is in the standby list, which he hasn't been on the radar for the last few years. So it is a bit of a recall. Again, I suppose the question is who? I mean, somebody's saying ahead of Trevor Nyakane. Trevor Nyakane can play loosehead and tighthead. We don't have another loosehead with experience after Ox and Chair. Trevor Nyakane has played far more at loosehead at international level than, for example, Kjell. So I don't think it's necessarily a like-for-like replacement, you know. So Wilco Loos really compete against Vincent Koch and Frans Malherbe, in my opinion. And, you know, I think if you look at that, then I think you kind of, is he going to be ahead of Vincent Koch and Frans Malherbe? On form, you know, maybe there's an argument, but the Boks management going to trust the players they've got, the players they've always rewarded them, and you know Vincent Koch, Frans Malherbe, Trevor Nyakane won us the World Cup, so they've gone with those three. So if you go back and look, for example, at Trevor over the years, he has been playing more at tight head, especially for Racing, for example, and has been playing majority at tight head. But if you look at for the Boks, I mean, you go back to the 21-22 season, played primarily at loosehead for the Boks actually. And in that British Large Lions series in 2021 as well, also played one at tight head, starting tight head, and then two off the bench at loosehead, played loosehead, and then tight for a season played at loosehead. So he is as good at loosehead as his tight head. So I think that he'll be in as the reserve loosehead, to be honest. I think that's what we're going to do. Similarly to Thomas Toy, he can also play on both sides. And that's a really big asset that the Boks look at. If you look at a season, he has primarily played at tight head. I think he started just once at loosehead for Sale Sharks, so he's been primarily at tight head. In fact, over the years he's basically become a tight head, to be perfectly honest. Yes, he can play at loosehead, but for the Sharks, the last time he played loosehead was the last time he started at loosehead for the Sharks. He hasn't basically in years and years and years. He's actually played more loosehead for South Africa, ironically, than he has for the Sharks. But he is a loosehead option, and that is a problem with Steven Kitshoff being injured, Gerald being very young and inexperienced. So that is the backs over there. Not too much really else to talk about. Let's talk a little bit about the forwards. Let's talk about the backs, shall we? Because a very interesting a couple of decisions there with who they've retained as well as who they've included. Just trying to get them to the screen in a second. Right, those are your backs. Big news is that Lekanya is back, fit, firing, and ready. He was injured and has been declared fit and has rejoined the squad. Also rejoining the squad, Billy Leroux and Kurt Arendse and Kubas Ranov. So the standard, the World Cup winners are back in. Sash Fame Gomezuli has been retained, which I said he would be. I think, again, that versatility point of view, you know, can play at 10, can play at 15, can play at 12, which way he's actually played the most. So I think that's quite that's a non-surprise. Mani Libach being retained as well. A lot of people talking about the fact that you know, Sima Masuka should be ahead of him. Again, the Springbok management does not just throw players in and out. They stick to their players. They stick to the players they trust. They stick to the players that they've been working with, for example, and there's a lot of loyalty in the Springboks coaching staff, which a lot of times you can say is a bad thing. A lot of times people say that you shouldn't have this sort of blind loyalty, but there's been that loyalty in the players that the coaches have had, which have really actually been one of their biggest assets. The fact that these players know that their coaches fully trust in them, which is how they've been getting every last little inch of performance out of them. So it's been an important part of this coaching staff's mantra is to back the players that they pick and to keep giving them as many chances as possible, because they want to provide an environment where, you know, a player like Asash Fahmy is not going to sit there going out and playing every single time thinking I'm going to get dropped if I don't play well. They don't do that. They sit there saying, we back you, we trust you, you will come good. And that is such an important backing to have as a player, where you're not trying to overperform all the time and as a result sort of do too much. You're in an environment, and he spoke about this actually in the interview, and if you haven't, go and check it out. It's really, really cool. he talks about how comfortable you feel in the environment and how much the players have worked to make it comfortable. So that comes with being loyal and backing the players that you trust in the Bok environment. So yeah, I think players who are interestingly have been retained, as I mentioned, such Fahmi Zulu can, as somebody mentioned over there in the comments, which I'm going to go to in a bit, can play a little bit of that Damon Williamson role, 10, 12, 15, can play across that backline. Apparently, Rassie was rewarded for that game he had against Wales. I do think it'll be Willie LaRue come Ireland, but Rassie getting that opportunity over there. Kubas Reinach being called up, again, not too surprising. Moine van den Berg being retained, maybe is a bit of a surprise. We've always loved to have 4 scrum halves in the squad, don't we? So, Faf de Klerk, Grant Williams, Kubas Reinach, and Moine van den Berg all involved there. My guess is that it'll be a Faf de Klerk to start if he is fit. There are injuries, by the way. Injuries at the moment currently include Ben Jason Dixon, Edel van der Merwe, and Edel van der Merwe, Michael Pimpy, and Faf de Klerk are the injured 3, which apparently are niggles, but could yet be in this frame for selection next week. So I think Faf de Klerk will probably start with a Grant Williams coming off the bench, maybe Kubas Reinach coming off the bench. If Faf de Klerk doesn't start, then I think Kubas Reinach starts. Still with the Grant Williams coming off the bench, what we saw during the World Cup, for example. So it's an interesting one. And but I think Moine van den Berg, for me, will face Portugal. I think they really do rate him. When I've been watching the training and stuff like that, he's been very heavily involved. He's been working a lot with Zandila Stick when you've watched the warm-ups and stuff like that. So I think that he is somebody who they do rate. Obviously, a big name is Andre Pollard comes back into test selection. And Moni Liebach, again, same kind of thing. You've got to back him. A year ago, Moni Liebach was, taking to test rugby like a duck to water. He really was, to be honest. And you look at 2 games, you look at that semi-final, and you look at purely the goal-kicking part of it, and you think that he's had a bad game. Moni Liebach was man of the match against Scotland, one of the most important games for us during the World Cup. Starts against Ireland, where we just came short. And, everybody's talking about, he's out of form and stuff like that. I don't think he's out of form. Yeah, he's had over 100 points in the URC. I think he had a poor quarterfinal. And the problem is, we've got that recency bias, don't we? That the last time he played, he wasn't great. Therefore, he's not in good form, which is nonsense at the end of the day. At the end of the day, that Stormers side are a different side when he doesn't play. When he plays, the Stormers side become one of the best sides in the URC. When he doesn't play, they tend not to be perfectly honest. So, again, a little bit of loyalty, I think, goes a long way with Moni Liebach, and the Bok management are going to reward that. We saw in Chase the Sun, they sat there saying, we are a better side. Andre Pollard was available. He was available during those playoffs and was in the bench. And they said very simply, if we're going to beat France, we need to have something like a Moni Liebach because of what he brings from the game point of view, more than just the goal kicking. And yes, eventually, you then go into a final and you go, right, Andre Pollard, and he kicks beautiful. We all know that. But to say Moni Liebach has not been in form, he didn't even say he had a bad World Cup. I think it was wrong. I think he struggled for 2 games. Apart from that, he didn't really put a foot wrong. And it's one of those things. Butch James, for example, didn't kick for goal in the 2007 World Cup. Didn't have to be. Percy Montgomery. If you had a Percy Montgomery, there would not be a single person talking about Moni Liebach and his form from the World Cup. That's the reality. If Damien Willemse could kick a goal like Percy Montgomery could, and that's not a criticism of Damien Willemse, by the way. Let's not try and go that direction. So yeah, I've got no issue with them retaining Moni Liebach. He's been very good for the Boks and had some very good games for us. As I said, man of the match in that performance against Scotland. I mean, how important was that game? The best Scottish side, arguably, ever. And he scored 6 points during it and won the man of the match with that incredible no-look pass. Cross kick, for example, was fantastic against Scotland. Was decent against Ireland. Was very comfortable against Tonga and had some very good moments against France. Again, look at that Taste in the Sun, for example, and you remember the good moments that he had against France. And then was the early sub against England. That was when he played half an hour and was pulled. But he's had a good. I still think he's had a very good time for. I mean, he actually won Breakthrough Player of the Year last year for the player who got capped within the last sort of calendar year. Before that, and up until the end of last season. So, yeah, I think he deserves to be there. And I think that I've got no issue with that. And then we look at the rest of it there. Jesse Creel, Well, I think for me, we'll still start outside centre despite the Kanya being around the park there. I think that Curtly Arts, and Colby probably be the starting wings. I don't think there's too many other big surprises in this backs, for example. Let's go into the kind of the comments. And yes, Hinkel van Veek is injured. So the players that were listed as injured, not available for selection: Steven Kitsoff, Jean Klein, Loert de Jager, Cameron Hanekom, which I mentioned yesterday when I did my video. So he was not considered for selection because he's injured, had a hamstring injury during that URC final, and so not available. And as well as I lost it now. Where the injured players, as well as Jaden Henderson still injured, Henkel van Veek injured, Kanan Moody, as well as Damian Willemse, all injured and therefore not considered. So yeah, going to some of the comments over here. What do we have saying? There is no captain decision yet. I will ask Rassie Erasmus tomorrow during the press conference what the decision is for his captain decision, or when they're going to make it. CP9 said, I don't think Mani will play against Ireland. Well, I mean, we know Andre Pollard's going to start. I'd imagine Pollard's going to start, would be my guess. But you never know. But yeah, so we'll wait and see there. But it still disappointed there's no Tyne Green. Other than that, I think it's a good squad. So MC saying the new attacking style will fit Mani better than Pollard, but if we need to grind a win out, then put Pollard on. That's also going to be an interesting thing, isn't it? You know, Tony Brown now in charge of that backline. We definitely did see his influence against Wales. I mean, we tried to round out the 22, for example. We saw a couple of moves. So I think that he's also going to have a big say in the selection of the Tensy ones. So, yeah. Brian saying Wilco is a better scrummager player than France, Vincent Trevor, and importantly, much younger. To say that Wilco Low is a better scrummager than Frans Malherbe might be one of the ballsiest shouts I've ever heard. Frans Malherbe, who's about not even that old, by the way, he's 33 years old. It's not that deep. Is arguably the best tight end in the world. So that's a big shout to say. And Wilco Low has been great, and he's on the reserve list. But to say that he's a better scrummager than a Frans Malherbe is a very large shout. Yes, he is slightly younger. He's 30 years old. None of those props particularly. Look, Trevor Nyakani is not going to make the next World Cup. I think he'll be here and it'll be a bit of a sort of passing over. But also, guys, I don't know if you guys have noticed or if you guys have heard, we're playing against arguably the second or third best side in the world next weekend. So this squad is not about 2027 purely. We've also got to win games, guys. We've also got to win trophies as well. It's a big squad already. There's lots of young players already. I still want to win games, though. I'm not going to... I mean, to sit there and say, okay, let's bin Frans Malherbe, let's bin Trevor Nyakani, let's bin Vincent Koch because, they're old and we need to stop with the next generation. Crap. Absolute crap for me. We've got to still win games. We've got to still win trophies. I want to see us win rugby championships. We need to win more than just the World Cup. We're good enough. We're good enough to win more than just the World Cup. Yes, the World Cup is the be-all and end-all, but why should it be? Why do we have the best players in the world and we have to choose to not win rugby championships so that we can win the World Cup? Let's start doing both. That's what, for me, made the New Zealand teams of old so good, is they used to win everything. Let's start winning everything. And so let's not bin the entire squad simply because players are over 30 years old. So CP saying, would love to see what Henkel van Veek will do in Test Rugby once he's fit. Ricardo saying Jesse's too good at the moment. Ryan says, you don't need Indukani to cover Loosehead as well. You have Thomas Toy do that. Indukani is already 35. If he was on form, then I'd understand it. Okay, so if you're going to make that kind of statement, then I would like a full report of his season in France, where he has played, and I'm not going to lie to you, 760 minutes in the top 14, as well as 206 in the Champions Cup. So across his 20 games for Racing this season, where he was a start of 75% to them, this Racing, which by the way got to those quarterfinals, like a full-on report showing me why he's not been on form. I'm not going to tell you what his form has been like that because I haven't watched enough. I've watched parts of him this season, and when I've watched him, he's looked really good. And during the World Cup, he looked pretty good. So it's easy for us to sit there and say Wilco Louw's in better form because we watch the Bulls every weekend. We don't watch wrestling every weekend. Let's be brutally honest here, people. And look, if you do, and I'm speaking out of turn, then fair enough. But I'm going to make the assumption here, which I think is a relatively safe assumption. We watch the URC. Therefore, we watch Volkolo far more than we watch Trevor Nyakane. We're watching Ulrich Lowe far more than we're watching Siya Kolisi at Racing. You know, we're watching Volkolo far more than Thomas du Toit at Bath. We are, you know, it's not even just it's also an accessibility thing, you know, it's easily available for us. So the last time Trevor Nyakane played for South Africa was the World Cup final, where he finished the game for us at tight head and was very solid. You know, he played against Ireland in that game as well, and played against Scotland. So he played some important games during the World Cup. When Vince Cock got injured, he got the opportunity. Again, I look back at that British and Irish Lions series. When Trevor Nyakane has been fit and firing, he's very rarely let the box down. He's a phenomenal player. So, and again, you know, there are certain players who have always stepped up in a box jersey. Siya Kolisi have always been a different player when he's playing for Springboks than when he is at provincial level, for whatever reason it is. For example, you remember those calls about Siya Kolisi being, you know, shouldn't have been called up 2 years ago, and he then went to play for the Boks and actually won Player of the Year. So, yeah, I think it's tricky to make those sort of statements. How did unplay with the season before his injury? I thought he was much better. Kanyam looked this season a lot more like his old self. Who was I saying to? Somebody went and watched the Sharks, and they were just saying, he said, it was my uncle, who actually played for Zim back in the day. He was saying that when he went to go watch the Sharks, he absolutely loved watching the Kanyam live. He says, you don't understand how involved he is and how good he is around the park watching on TV than you do when he's live. He said his movement, his pace, the way he plays the game, he said it was absolutely incredible to watch him play. So I think he has been a lot better this season. I don't think he's moving Jesse Creel. Jesse Creel will start against Ireland. I don't see why you'd even think about dropping him in the form he's in currently. But if he does get injured, I am a bit more confident that we are getting the Lukhanyo of old if Lukhanyo does start in the midfield there. Little big media coach saying, I'd be happy with the bigger squad, send a separate away team to play the 2 games in Australia and the one in Argentina, fill it with young players who don't have Oz condition experience since URC started. No! We want to win this, don't we? Why must we sacrifice games against Australia? Not that I'm saying we're going to necessarily sacrifice them. I know it's Australia not the best side, but I want to win the Rugby Championship. Am I the only one that wants to win the Rugby Championship this year? Am I the only one that wants to go and beat Ireland to both tests? Thank you very much. And then go and beat Australia. By the way, those are our first 2 games. You go over to Australia and you win those first 2 games. You know, you have to probably beat New Zealand once and beat Argentina twice. And then you've probably won the Rugby Championship. I think this season we can beat Ireland twice and go and put that whole conversation to bed. And we can go win the Rugby Championship. And we can go to the Autumn Nations Series at the end of the year saying, in the last 12 months, we have won the World Cup, the Rugby Championship, and beaten Ireland, what was the number 1 side in the world over the past few years, twice. That's what I believe we can do, and that's what I want us to do. So pick the best squad. There are youngsters in the squad. That's the thing. You can't say there aren't youngsters there. Morley van der Berg, player for the future. Edel van der Merwe, he's 28, 29, makes the next World Cup, player for the future. Grant Williams, still very young. Maya Liebach makes another, at least 1 more World Cup, if not maybe even 2. Jesse Creel's not an old player. Sasha Fahmy Gomezulu's 22 years old. Apele Fassi, young player there. Kurt Lawrence makes the next World Cup. All of those players. In fact, the only player there I don't think makes the next World Cup is Willie Leroux and potentially a Kobus Reinach. Maybe a Damien Day-Lindy, who I think is about 32 now, 33 this year. So maybe he doesn't make the next World Cup. And maybe a Cheslin Colby doesn't make the World Cup, but majority of those players make the next World Cup. So I don't think we need to bin them. Same as the forwards. I'm going to go back to my forwards. You know, if you look at those players, Kolisi probably doesn't make the World Cup. Vincent Koch probably doesn't make the World Cup. Frank Mossa probably doesn't make the World Cup. Maybe Trevor doesn't make the next World Cup. Who else is not going to make the next World Cup? Peter Stephen Toy might. Evan Etzebeth probably will. But Akroblot does. Pepsi Woodlaser does. Ben Jason Dixon does. Marks does, Bongi Manami does, Salman Murat does, Oxen Chair does, Evan Lewis does, Quacker Smith does, Archer Sneeman does, Gerard Stennekamp does, Marco Verstaden, maybe not. Jasper Wiese does. So it's still very much a squad that this could very well be our squad come, the 2027 World Cup. And I don't see why we can't also win trophies along the way. Ishwin Clarkson saying, I surely do think the squad has the best of both. When we last played against Ireland, we were short of fly halves, yet we still managed to lose a nail biter. Watch us now in full force. Spansbeck saying, Creel from Bulls can feel hard done by. I think he could probably argue that he maybe had a better season than Ethan Hooker, who's been a bit of I wouldn't say a flash in the pan. That's the wrong way, but he's come in late in the season, had a really good few games, now sort of rewarded. David Creel has been very consistent for the last 2 years. And so I think that he could feel disappointed, maybe not to be in that standby list. I don't think he makes the final list, for example. But let's look at that standby list, shall we? So that is the standby list, by the way. So Jean-Luc Dupré, who's a lot of people were complaining about not being involved in the last few years. He is still on the the whole formatting of this thing's gone here. Fix it in 2 seconds. So he is obviously still very much on the radar for the box, which is good to see. If you are a Jean-Luc Dupré fan. And I'm just going to quickly sort that formatting out, and then we'll have a relook at that. And I think somebody mentioned obviously the fly halves thing. I think that's an important part because we had a bit of an issue where for years, and to be fair, and I think the Bok manager would probably have to admit they kind of put it on themselves because we only had 2 fly halves, Nelson Yankees and Andre Pollard for the entire sort of time post-COVID. And then obviously the whole Alton Yankees incident came, and then we had an injury to Andre Pollard, and all of a sudden Martin Liebach, who was barely a Springbok, was thrown to the deep end and went to the World Cup with less than 5, 6 or 7 caps to his name, less than 10 caps, and he was the starting fly half at the World Cup. So also, factor that into his performance, by the way, which I think you do need to. So now we have decided to add all the Springbok, all the fly halves. So let's look at that standby list. Jean-Luc Dupré, Joseph Weber, Neertling Bashir, Sinampilo Gamedi, Ulrich Loh, Wilco Loh, Instukan, Ruben van Heerden, Andre Hugo Venter. What you are seeing there is, look at the forwards, you are seeing the heir to be. Maybe not so much Jean-Luc Dupré, but you are seeing in future. So, for example, Titan, Francois Herber retires, Neertling Bashir is there. Trevor Nyakana retires, Wilco Loh is there. Thomas Toye retires, Intuka Kluna's there. That's what we're seeing. Franco Moster retires, Ruben van Heerden's there. Sia Khaleesi or a Pistef Toye moves on, Albert Loh is there. That's what we're seeing. So the standby list is the future. Same with the backline players, for example. Willie LaRue moves on, Kieran Horn slots in. Injury to Andre Pollard or whatever, you've got Jordan Hinton and Sia Masuku. Slayman Hartzenberg, for Jason Colby for Mapimpi, for example. So Ethan Hooker there for Damien Delendi. So that is the future. Those players are your fringe players for the future, and there's some very nice fringe players there. Very good players. I think that I will still down on my hill. I still think Jordan Henderson will play many tests for the Boks. I think Kieran Horn's going to play many tests for the Boks. Slayman Hartzenberg's looked like a Springbok in waiting for a long time. Ethan Hooker's obviously the big exciting option. You look at those forwards, and Wilco Loh will once again play for the Boks. I've got no doubt. I think Ruben van Heerden will become a fantastic player for the Boks. Ulrich Loh, and there can be somebody talking about Ruan Nokia being very unlucky to miss out, and I think he is unlucky to miss out. But I think it's Ruan Nokia or Ruben van Heerden, and I'll tell you what, I would pick Ruben van Heerden. In terms of age-wise, there's not much between them. 1 year, so it's not like it's an age thing. And for me, the big thing is look at the size of Ruben van Heerden versus look at the size of Ruan Nokia. I think Ruben van Heerden is a proper line-out jumper, for example, really, really talented. But I think very importantly, he's a big ball carrier. He's a big physical presence. Ruan Nokia is a grafter, and I'm not going to say that a bad season. He has been fantastic. But I think that Ruben van Heerden, for me, is such a big physical presence that when we want to, inverted commas, F them up physically, he is a player who fits into that mold. So what else are we saying over here? Alpha Lincoln says, agree with the championship by putting All Blacks away before we start talking next World Cup. CP Nunes saying, Delendigo aging like fine wine, dipped a bit when he should have been young and prime, but he is in great form. Clinton says, great squad. Unfortunately, a squad can only be that big, but best is definitely there. Most excited to see the wings. I rate them the best wings in the world, no matter who starts. Franny Rose talking about Johan Goosen. I think Johan Goosen was on the radar. He was part of the lineman camps, and he got injured once again, and I think the bulk management said, bang. So yeah, I think that is what happened with him. And I think that he again once again basically the untimely injury was probably the final straw. I think they were looking at him and saying, right, do we give him a final chance? Or and then it just didn't really happen. Because saying Sia Masuku sent out players, Libo can spark a backline. I don't think he's quite the same player, but I understand what you mean in terms of attacking fly half. I love Sia Masuku. I think that if he had been playing since the beginning of the season and he had played September through to now, he'd have a better chance. I think he's going to have a great season next season. I think he will be involved in the box again next season. I think him and Gordon Hendricks are going to be a really interesting fight for that number 10 jersey. Little Big Media saying, why do you automatically assume an Oz away team would lose? We have incredible depth. Use it now. I'll tell you exactly why I assume that. If we go look at the last few years playing in Australia, we have won one out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. One out of the last 12 games away in Australia. That's how many times we won in Australia. One out of the last 12. So the last time we won was in 2022, where we played them at Sydney Football Stadium, and we won 24 points to 8. The weekend before, by the way, we lost 25 points to 17. Before that, the last time we beat Australia in Australia was in Perth in 2009. We don't do well in Australia. We have never done well in Australia. So that's why I'm saying, you asked, I mean, that is one of the toughest things for us to do, is to go over. We've actually got a better record in New Zealand recently than we do against Australia. So that's why I wouldn't go and say, cool, the youngsters can go over to Australia. And I know that this is not the strongest Australian side, but genuinely that is the record. And there's a reason for that record. Australia are good at home. Ricardo saying Ethan Hooker, definitely the future. Michael says, I do think SAA would be good for those players, or SA Cup and Curry Cup players to play against lower tier countries and clubs. 100%. 100% agree that we should see an SAA. I think it is very expensive, unfortunately. So that is the issue. But I'd love to see an SAA side involved. Hopefully towards the end of the year, we can try and get a bit of a core. Dal was saying, anyone know how long Moody is out for rugby? I'm not entirely sure if he's out for the rugby championship. We wait and see. A lot of people talking about the SAA idea. Albert Finnegan saying, I see what Rassie is doing. He's trying to move away from A and B team and rather have a mix of best to A and A plus team. Yeah, well, I think that's the main thing, isn't it? It's about having your strongest team, and then be able to integrate players into that team, like we did against Wales. That Wales side was not an experimental side. Yes, it was missing a lot of big players. No Ches and Colby, no Andre Pollard, no Sia Khaleesi, no Jasper Visa, for example, no Willie LaRue, no Kirkley Orense. So we're definitely missing some key players, but it was still so much experience. And that's a nice environment for Sashfami Gomezulu, for example, to make his debut. And that's what we've done very well, is that we are incorporating players, young players, new players into a system that is already working. And as a result, we are giving them the best opportunity to succeed. And that's what I want to see, you know. And that's why I think, and I've been very disappointed, actually, by the reaction to Jordan Hendricks' performance, because, yes, it wasn't his best. And now everyone's saying, well, you see, he's not cut out for Test rugby. And I think that is such a toxic reaction. It's such a toxic way of looking at it. For a 22-year-old, 23-year-old, you know, making his debut, starting at 10, you know, in Twickenham, for example, having a subpar game, and now he's no longer good enough for Test rugby. I mean, if he had, for example, had played in a few weeks' time against Portugal in a packed up Bloemfontein with, you know, Damon Delendi inside him, Jesse Creel as at the other wing. The two wings being Kurt Lawrence, Chesney Colby, Billy LaRue, Faf de Klerk, and we played him at 10 there. He probably would have had an absolutely sensational game, and we would have turned around saying, this kid's the next big thing. We don't bin players based on one game. We can't. We've done that too many times in the past, where we have absolutely torn players apart after one game, and they've never come back from it. You've got to trust that these players will come good. He's a young player, and he will come good, for example. And then that's the thing I think this box management understand, is that they need to make an environment where these players are going to thrive. Make an environment where Suleiman Haltenberg can become a world beater. Provide an environment for Sashfami Gomezulu to become one of the best, if not the best 10s in the world. That's what we've got to do. But we do that as fans by backing our players. Don't judge a player after 55 minutes and decide he can't play Test rugby. We've done that too many times in the past, and I think we need to start learning about this. That sometimes players take a while to get going. Let's be perfectly honest. Damien Willemse did not light the world on fire when he started his Test career. He didn't, and we all knew how talented Damien Willemse was. But when Damien Willemse, as a 19-year-old, played for South Africa, he did not light the world on fire. We did not suddenly sit there going, holy shit, this is going to be the man to change everything. He made his debut back in, I think it was 2018 or 2018. Made his debut 6 years, as a 19-year-old. And he got a couple of minutes off the bench. Damien Willemse, for me, is top 5 best players in the world. I will happily say that. Based on that World Cup, top 5 best players in the world right now. I think he is. If not, at least top 10. And I think he could be the best player in the world. So let's let other players struggle and then thrive. Let's not bin players after one bad game. Evan Roos has had a quiet start to Test rugby. Looked a lot better this weekend against Wales. But, similarly, had a fantastic season for the Stormers. URC Player of the Year. Had one game for the Box. Maybe didn't impress. And everyone's like, oh, you see, he's not cut out for Test rugby. No, nonsense. He will get there. But we've got to give him the chance to get there. People didn't rate Franco Mostert. Going back to my forwards. People didn't rate Franco Mostert when he first started playing Test rugby. He was part of a really poor tide. Oh, he's too light. He's too lightweight. He's not big enough, not physical enough. Look at how important Franco Mostert has been for the Box in the last. He didn't miss a tackle during the playoffs last year. He was absolutely immense. He's one of the best locks in the world as far as I'm concerned. I think last year was more important to us winning the World Cup than an Arcus Neyman was. I think he was absolutely terrific. And the line-out jumper, for example, look at that British Irish Lions series. Now, he's a player who struggled initially. People said Kwaka Smith was too small. Even when he started first playing for the Box, no, he's too small, doesn't really add an impact. He had that man of the match performance for the Barbarians against New Zealand, and I said, yup, you see, and now look at him. Now everyone's talking about him as being, the best impact player in the world. Players grow, players get better, players adapt. Peter du Toit was absolutely torn apart. Absolutely torn apart when he was first moved to flank. He was playing flank when we got hammered in Hamilton. And he was one of the players who was really targeted. And they said that he was, not good enough. He went on to win World Player of the Year in 2019. World Player of the Year in 2019. Not to mention being the man of the match in the 2023 Rugby World Cup final. He has become one of the best players to ever play for the Springboks. People calling for him to be dropped. People calling to say that he wasn't good enough. So, we as fans, there's a lot of tribalism. We're always going to want other players to play. We always want our players to play. People, Bulls fans at the moment are raging at the no David Creel. They're raging at the no Ruan Nokia. And that's natural. You watch these players. And again, what I mentioned, we watch our teams more than anything else. If I'm picking one game in the weekend, if I can only watch one game in the weekend during the URC, I'm watching my Lions game. That's what I'm watching. If you're a Bulls fan, you're watching the Bulls game. If you're a Sharks fan, you're making sure you watch that Sharks game. If you're a Stormers fan, you're watching that Stormers game. Now, over and above that, you'll probably try and watch the other South African teams, won't we? Let's just do a bit of analysis of how you watch our rugby. So I do the watch-alongs of all the South African games over the weekend, so I'm generally watching Bulls, I'm generally watching Stormers, I'm generally watching Sharks alongside the Lions. So those are the 4 teams I'm watching. I'm not watching Leicester Tigers every weekend and seeing how Andre Pollard and Jasper Wiese is doing. I'm certainly not watching a lot of Japanese rugby to see how Malcolm Marx and Damon Delendenbergers are doing. And I'm probably not watching a lot of top 14, see how Sia Khaleesi and Trevor Nyakana is doing. So, we're always going to want our players to do well and stuff like that. But what I'm saying is that players and also what I think it's important is that different players take different amounts of time to adapt to international rugby. So let's go and see what these players can do. Yes, Sachibami Gomezulu was fantastic off the bench. He will have bad games for the Springboks. Maybe he won't. Maybe he'll just be, absolute anomaly and be the first person ever in the history of rugby to never have a bad international game. He'll have dips of form. He's had struggles for the Stormers. Does that mean he's not going to become one of the best fly-halves in the world? No, it doesn't. But we need to allow these players to struggle, allow these players to have bad games, so they can become the best players they can be. And that's very important. Matthew Dixon saying, we don't want a repeat of the Oz versus RSA 2006 match in Brisbane. Send the best team. Do you see PFC Buthelezi getting a cap against Ireland? No, I think he'll get a cap against Portugal a week later. Ganji saying, I'm sorry, but Jordan ain't it. Coming from a Lions fan, there's better younger options. No, I completely disagree. He's been one of our best players the last few years. He's had one mediocre season. The kid's 22 years old. Do you think the squad could win the next 5 home games? Which is what? Yeah, well, the next 4 of those 5 are against Ireland and New Zealand. So it would be incredible if we do. We probably do lose one of them. At least one of them, probably. And even that's okay if it is the case. But let's see. I hope so. But it's going to be a big ask. Malcolm saying, I think we are just at the later stage of a long stint with our current box that we trust, and we constantly see that a new player is just held to an unfair, different standard. Also, not a bad take, actually. The fact that we're so used to these players who are so seasoned. Majority of these players in the squad. So, for example, you look over there, and I believe, let me go through it and see who's got 50 plus tests for the box. Besef Totoy, Eben Etzebeth, Vincent Koch, Sia Khaleesi, Frans Malherbe, Malcolm Marx, Bongi Manambi, Franco Mostert. I think Trevor Nyakana's got. Yeah, so that's what, 9. They're more than 9. So 9 or 19. No, it's 9. Yeah, 9. Right there, yeah. Let's go. Peter Sestoy, Eben Etzebeth, Vincent Koch, Khaleesi, Marx, Malherbe, Bongi Mostert, Trevor. Yeah, 9. 9 out of the 22 of those players have 50 plus caps. And of those 9, who was starting in that World Cup final, who was involved in that World Cup final, who would have been involved in the World Cup final as well. Malcolm Marx wasn't, but he would have been. Jasper Wiese, one of them that wasn't. Arcus Neyman, who's will get there if he was fit enough. Oxen Chair is a matter of time before he gets there. So, these players are such seasoned internationals. They're used to playing at this level. They've been playing at this level for a long time. And it's not fair to then compare them to the youngsters. When they're youngsters, that's exactly what they are. They're young, they're volatile. It makes them exciting because sometimes they'll do things that others can't, because that's the whole point. They're new, they're going to try things, for example. They've got different attitude, they've got different, they talk about the party trick. That's what Rassie Erasmus talks about. Or I think I'm trying to remember who it was that sort of coined the phrase. But apparently everyone's got that sort of one thing that sets them out as a special player. And those young players will have that, but you've got to let them adapt. Intan Corsi saying, honestly, the defensive prowess and creativity of Jesse Creel has gone up a level since taking his opportunity after injury. But now with back, I truly believe he is our best outside centre. I'm not sure if you're talking about as our outside centre or Jesse Creel. I don't think Jesse Creel gets dropped. I think Jesse Creel is another good example of a player who dips in and out. Jesse Creel in 2015 World Cup was incredibly important. By the time it came to 2019, he'd been usurped by the Kanya Last year, people were getting upset that he was playing. I've always rated him, to be fair, and don't try to say I didn't, because I've got a lot of abuse for it. Look at him last season. Barton said, I like that you admitted you do not watch lots of rugby. If you did, you will know how good Tyron Green has been and that he deserves a shot to prove people wrong. I don't know if that's supposed to be a dig at me. Are you really going to tell a Lions fan about Tyron Green? You're going to tell a person that's done several videos about how he should be part of the squad. It's a bit of a weird comment. I'm just trying to understand. If you're trying to basically imply that I don't watch rugby, you don't know what I'm saying. I was watching Tyron Green under 20 levels, boy. Watch yourself. Watch yourself. Do not come here and try and talk about the fact that I know Tyron Green is. I've been advocating for him. In fact, go and find my rant when we released him from the Lions. There's one player you can't count to me. It is Tyron Green. Leave my boy alone. Well, I should be fair. You're back, my boy. Leave me alone about my boy because I've been calling for him. It's going to make me very upset when he plays for England. And I'm going to cry. There's going to be tears coming down the face over there. So, yeah. So I'm a little bit triggered there for that one. Leandro Bez has got a few players there. He reckons the front row of Ox, Marks, Malherbe, Eben and Sosia, Pierstef, Toy, Ruas as our starting pack for Ireland. Then Bongi, Indikane, Koch, Achia, Kwacha, Pepsi, Marcus Darden, and a back. You know, not a bad. Oh, 7-1 split there. 7-1 split. Nice balls. I like it. I like it. Jacques Kirsten saying, FYI, Jordan Henderson has a tackling success rate of 94%. He seems to be very reliable in general, something which can help release our world-class wings. On a different note, can Blitzboks get a medal in Paris? I hope so. Actually, yes. No, they can. They can. Whether they will, I don't know. It's so difficult to know what to expect from this Blitzboks side because one day they are coming 7th in the World Series. The next day, they are world beaters. And they've had really 2 bad years. But at the end of the day, it's a Olympic situation where you've got to play, 5 games? Really? You got to win 5 games? You got to win 2 group games, quarterfinal, semi-final, and final. Yeah, you got to win 5 games. Ideally 6. But you got to win 5 games. And if they can go and win 5 games, then they can get a medal. If they can go and win... Well, if they win 5 games, they should guarantee themselves a medal. And if you win 4 games, well, you can still win a medal. It's just have to be a bronze. But I get that. That's the nice thing about the Olympics. If you get to, for example, that final, you're guaranteed at least a silver medal, which we'd very much take. We've not got the easiest pool. New Zealand in there. I don't think it's too bad. I don't think it actually really is an easy pool, to be fair. There are only 3 of them, but we'll wait and see. They played nicely on Sunday. Defended really well, which is good. I think they've got some nice experience back. But I don't want to get too optimistic about that 7th side. Albert saying, Elise Sasha is no longer available for England. Stanford Blue saying, I feel for Albert Lowe. Ricardo saying, Tyron Green and Augustus is going to play for England. CP News said, Grandland would piss off World Rugby, but man, that would feel great after a World Cup. Sorry, not the Grandstand. Double saying, won't be long until England call up Green. Rassie doesn't rate him clearly. Yeah, it's an interesting one, that whole Tyron Green. And I think, Tyron Green was very open about the fact that when he made the move to the UK, that he had a conversation with Rassie Erasmus, or at least with SC Rugby, talking about, was this now going to take him out of contention for the box? And it supposedly wasn't. So it's an interesting one. Louis Smith saying, old man Villy does not deserve the green and gold. Yo, imagine being a Villy LaRue hater in 2024. Imagine being a Villy LaRue hater in 2024. You can lead. You can take a horse to water. Hey? And the lack of respect Villy LaRue gets still continues to get. I mean, how much more does the man have to do before we all start rating him? Is he going to play for the next World Cup? No. Does he deserve to get to 100 games for the box? Certainly. How many games is he away from that? 7. So in theory, he could get there this year. He could become a Springboks centurion. But at the end of the day, it's only the bronze medal in the 2015 World Cup, the gold medal in the 2019 World Cup, the gold medal in the 2023 World Cup, as well as the British and Irish Lions Series, as well as the Rugby Championship. That's, at the end of the day, the only thing he's really won. So, fair enough. Fair enough. Leave my boy alone. Warm Villy, coming up to the end of his career. Right, people, speaking of the end, we're going to wrap up there. Thank you very much for joining me over the last hour. It's been fun. Always nice to debate and discuss and engage on the squad. So thank you very much for joining me. We have got a video up on the squad. We will be doing it some things like a predicted 15, for example, and the likes over the next few days. So make sure you check in on.
Yeah, good. Obviously, when you just recently retired last year, you probably didn't quite have a 100% idea of what it was that you were going to be doing within the team. Can you take us through how how a day-to-day sort of looks for you, or week-to-week, I don't know. And then, and the second part of the question is, do you sort of referee all the sessions in real time?
Yeah, a few months ago I had a meeting with my wife and we agreed that we're done with rugby, and 2 weeks later we had to go to the same restaurant, another bottle of wine, and I had to explain to her I'm back into rugby. So it's been quite a turnaround, but I mean, I guess when rugby's in your blood, it's hard to stay away. Day to day for me, it's still a developing science. First brief is something we started last year, and the World Cup campaign. I spent a bit of time with the team, and the coaching staff asked me what can they fix, and I said we need to build a respect piece around refereeing in this country, not just for this team, but also around refereeing in this country. We need more referees and we need people to serve the game, so we have to create a different environment. So that's the first part of the brief, create that environment in the team. And then the second part is these fellas have got to coach within the key areas accurately. So my job is not to judge a referee performance. My job is to make sure that these fellas coach within the key focus, and then that those fellas then play and execute in those areas. And then obviously after games there will be alignment, whether we should adjust after a game or whether the referees will adjust. So that's the main day to day. And yes, I do have to referee a bit of training. And last week I also had to play a little bit. It was short of numbers, and I quickly found out I'm not going to play again.
So just a follow-on, the response from the missus?
He's fine.
Yeah, we haven't spoken yet. No, she also loves rugby, so pretty good.
Jakub, when it comes to the decision making and giving the players decision making by knowing the laws, how do you rate if it was, let's say, a player fault, or this one sort of against the team sort of ethos and where you're going? How do you sort of look in terms of imparting that information to the players?
Yeah, like I say, it's pretty clear what World Rugby wants. They put out a guideline, and then we have to measure players. We never plan to not concede penalties. We plan to avoid avoidable penalties. If you take part in the game, you're going to concede a penalty somewhere. So we class them in one or two or three categories. But like I say, it's a developing science, and it's a job that's going to develop and get more detailed as we go, because it's kind of the first of its sort.
Yeah, and maybe what you said now, maybe it's not surprising that more and more teams, especially the top teams, get an international referee in them. We've seen it quite around the world now. Is it not surprising because of the laws, the detail of it, and that they are getting ex-refs in?
Yeah, I guess it's not something new. Andy Brace and Frank Murphy goes to Ireland trainings in camp. Wayne Barnes would have gone, Luke Pearce would have gone to England trainings, Ben O'Keefe is at the moment in the New Zealand camp. So I think that the teams find it more and more necessary as we go. The game gets faster and more dynamic to make sure that the players and the coaches are spot on when they train, because you can't fix everything Saturday.
Tony, maybe just what do you make of the rivalry between South Africa and Ireland? Also, just a lot has been said in the build-up to this big match coming up on Saturday.
Yeah, obviously Ireland have been playing some really good rugby for a number of years now, and you know, South Africa have won the last two World Cups, and Ireland probably feel as though they should have got more out of their World Cups. So it's created this who's number one in the world, and you know, I guess both teams think they're number one, and it's created a bit of media stuff, and it's good for you guys to get some ex-players to throw a few shots at the different countries, and adds a bit of entertainment leading up to what's going to be a massive test match.
Tony, you've coached against South African teams, you've played against South African teams at Super Rugby international level. What have you made about the evolution of the tackling in South African rugby over the years?
Yeah, well, obviously it's never an easy team to play against, and it's definitely difficult to coach against, especially if you're coaching Japan. But South Africa have always had a style of play that's very, very hard to stop. It's based around physicality. It's based around being dominant in the set piece. So for me, around where can we go with our attack, I think we can do some amazing things if we keep that physicality, keep that domination, and then, you know, try and evolve around attacking a little bit more space more often, and trying to get the players to understand how we create that space, and then what we're required to do to attack it.
And just to carry on that, when you got the approach from Rassie, what was the one exciting thing for you in terms of potential of working with these players?
The biggest thing really was probably going to be this weekend. It's, as a rugby player, you want to play in the biggest matches. You know, I've always wanted to be a rugby coach, and I want to coach in the biggest matches, and this weekend's a huge occasion. Loftus is very intimidating. It's an amazing ground to play at, to be at, and Ireland, obviously one of the better teams in the world. So it's going to be a great challenge, and I just want to be involved in, you know, coaching South Africa against the best teams.
Grunty, I think the last time you played for the Boks in South Africa, you didn't play very long. Maybe is this the perfect opportunity for you to just try and get rid of those memories of you in the green and gold?
I think if I get selected, still waiting on team announcement. I think that will be in the back of my head, but yeah, if I get selected, it will just be another opportunity for me to showcase my talent and to make sure that I bring my part to the team if I get selected.
Well,
Tony, how has it been settling in so far here? You've been here for quite a few months now, settling in with the team, and how has it been sort of trying to stamp your mark? Has it been a little bit tough, or have the guys been very amenable so far, and are you getting into it quite nicely?
Yeah, well, the players have been amazing. You know, we haven't had everyone for a long period of time, but everyone's sort of got into camp, full squad last week. So just getting them to understand what we can create and what we can do if we get things right, has been awesome. The players have really bought into what we're trying to do. Now it's my challenge to push them as far as I can, and challenge them to, you know, push themselves to be better rugby players. And I guess I'm the attack coach, so I want them to be the best attacking players in the world.
Tony, just following on from that, against Wales it seemed like there were times when there were a lot of 50-50 passes, and it seemed to get a little bit loose at times. Was that something that you were concerned about, or is that kind of part of the evolution that you're trying to, you know, when you say if the players get it right?
Yeah, I think against Wales we did some amazing things. We scored some pretty good tries, and the boys, you know, around working on their skill set have been outstanding at seeing those pictures and being able to execute under pressure. And like anything in a game of rugby, if you're pushing the players to be better all the time, there is going to be mistakes. But, you know, over time we're hoping to negate the mistakes and have better execution, better decision making.
From Tony and Jaco, is there anything that you gentlemen have learned since being in the day-to-day Springbok environment that you were possibly unaware of or didn't consciously think of since you joined?
No, not really. Tough question.
I've got an interesting roommate. No, look, I've been coming to Springbok camp on short stints for a while, so we're pretty much accustomed to what they do here. What you can see is how much these guys work for each other, and that's something that refereeing is catching on to in the last few years, which is really inspiring to a group of referees, working more together, looking after each other.
Tony, can I just ask you about how it's been to work with Jerry Flannery? What has he brought since he's come on board, and does he have any particular insights to offer this week that he might not other opponents?
Yeah, well, he's my roommate, so that's been interesting. But, you know, we've obviously bonded over the last, we've probably been hanging out together for the last 8 weeks. When the players go home, he's my wife and I'm his wife, so we go out for dinner and hold hands and things like that. But no, what I've noticed is he's a fantastic coach. he coaches the game very well, and he coaches it with some real intensity, which is ideal for a defence coach. And yes, he knows a lot about Ireland. I can't let you into what he's been telling the boys, but he's definitely got an insight into how their mentality and their mindset.
Okay, questions back. When you look at the Irish Flags in particular, they've gone through a changing of the guard, and you slightly said the same with South Africa, with the change of Flags from what you would have played against in your era to what the exciting crop of players now. How exciting will that particular clash be?
Yeah, well, I played a long time ago, so with obviously Johnny Sexton, who was, probably Ireland's greatest player, with him retiring after the World Cup, it's left a massive hole for Ireland. But I think the young boy McCarthy, is it McCarthy? Yeah, Crowley. I keep getting that wrong. Young kid Crowley's done a fantastic job. He's been really dominant in the Six Nations. He looks like a fantastic rugby player for Munster, and he doesn't seem like he's nervous on the field at all. So I think he's fitted in pretty nicely.
Tony, just a word on South Africa's flags, working with them and with Grant and the scrum-offs. You said about attacking space earlier. The decision making, how have you found that?
It's been really good. It's it's been a little bit different for them. Just trying some new things and getting them sort of trying to play the game a little bit differently. Obviously with Andre a little bit older, he's been around a long time, so I'm hoping that with a bit more time we can build quite a good partnership and get him playing some really exciting rugby. That when I was watching him as an under-20s player, he was probably the most dominant fly half on the gain line in the world as a 20-year-old. So if we can get him back to that sort of footy, that'd be amazing. And guys like Marnie and Sasha and even Jordan, like they play the game a little bit differently. So just understanding them as players and then them understanding me as a coach, I think it's only going to develop over time. And the best thing from my point of view is they've all got amazing skill sets, and they can all push themselves massively and challenging themselves to be better rugby players. So it's exciting for me, and hopefully it's exciting for them to get coached a different way.
Question. Coach Rassie is quite an unconventional guy, the kind of thinking outside the box. How have you found him working closely with him? His thinking, the way he views the game, and generally as a human being.
He's been awesome. I obviously got coached by him back in 2008, and I really love the way that he coached the game then. I still love the way he coaches the game now. He gets the players together quickly, and he gets the players all going in the same direction. So for me as a coach, coaching on the back of that, it's makes my job a lot easier.
Jaco, looking at the law changes, a lot of the attention has gone to the free kick into the scrum. In real time, what have you actually found to be the laws that have exercised your sort of attention the most?
Yeah, look, obviously first of all we're trialling the new television match official protocol, so thanks to Ireland for also being willing to go into that space where we all recognise that we have to do something, so we have to have some data and trials and be innovative, and maybe after the series we say no, this is not the way, but at least we tested it. But Ireland was willing with us to innovate, so that's positive. And if you don't know the protocol, it takes you back to the last attacking possession, so you can review technicalities up to the last attacking possession, excluding set piece stuff, which in the past could only be 2 phases, which gives the television official a chance in real time to look at something, and if there is a clear knock on or a clear foot on touch, you don't have to let it play out until it's a try and then go for a big referral based on facts. So they have to have factual proof, and then they can just stop the officials and go back. Hopefully that will speed up that process. That's one of the things. And then the so-called DuPont law will probably create a little bit more space, or a lot more space, if the kicking game is not spot on and you don't have players working back to put you on side. because you can't stay outside of 10 meters anymore and be put on side by anything the opposition does, like a pass or a run 5 meters. So I think that's the one, the training that we feel has got the biggest impact. Referees have made it quite clear that they don't want to give free kicks at scrum if they're 50-50, so they'll order a reset. So that I don't see that as having that big impact.
Grant, how have the new guys been settling into the system so far? And how's it been working with the guys sort of in your department, like Sasha and Mornay?
I think awesome. I'm still new as well, so I'm still learning, and obviously with Coach Tony coming in, still learning new things. But I think all of us are on the right track. I think if you look back a year or two ago, things would have been different based on attack. And now for all the newer guys like myself, Mornay, Sasha, Jordan, Mani, we're learning and we're building, and that's positive for us. Yeah, so on the right track.
Jacob, where are the difficulties of referee?
No, I've refereed Ireland for more than 12 years, and it was a very successful period for them, and they've been very effective over that time. With a guy like Joe Schmidt, they're very particular and accurate. So, like any good team, when they are on song, it's a pleasure. And like any good team, when they get frustrated, there'll be some probably exchanges, but don't confuse the minute with the hour. It's been good with Ireland, been good with most of those teams, special competitions. Mostly I refereed them in Six Nations. It's been pretty good.
Grant, the environment that you find yourself in, the Springbok environment, for you as a player, what have you realized and what have you sort of come to in terms of becoming better, and what does this sort of environment demand for you?
I think it's healthy competition. I think that's the most important thing for me. I normally grow, talking about myself now personally, I normally grow when the competition's on, so we have 4 good nines at the moment, and if you look at nines in general in South Africa, they've been all successful in their department, so for me it's been healthy. It's been healthy competition. It brings out the best in me personally.
In terms of perspective, what has been expected for you, and how has that opened your perspective?
I think the Springbok standards are high, so I'm not going to go into detail on what we're doing, but there's no time for you to slack or to drop your intensity. It's always mental toughness first of all, and then high standards.
Grant, how exciting is this moment of playing the first test of the year back in South Africa? This opportunity, obviously in 2020, wasn't available because of COVID, and now the Boks do finally have an opportunity to play a first test at home as double world champions. How are you guys receptive to the emotional state of playing this particular test, especially against Ireland in particular?
I think the vibe in the camp is quite exciting. I think everyone's looking forward to this test. To be back on home soil, I think that's also special. Sold out Loftus, I think everyone's looking forward to that. But overall, I think, like I said before, the vibe in the camp, everyone's pretty excited, players and management.
Grant, this is your chance to get yourself into Tony's good books. What's the most sort of exciting or interesting thing you've learned from working with him over the last few weeks?
I think Coach Tony mentioned it early on. It's just for us to see space better. I think that's the one thing that stood out for me as a 9. To identify space earlier, and obviously seeing it much better, and that's one thing that stood out for me. Am I in your good books?
Grant, are you enjoying sort of being able to focus a bit more on 9 this year after playing a bit on the wing at the World Cup? Has that been a bit better for you?
Both, actually. Whatever the Springboks demand or ask of me, I think I'll be able to deliver and put myself in that position. So it doesn't matter if it's 9 or wing. Whatever the Springboks demand, I'll take it on.
Grant, Tony's obviously touched on it, that there's a lot of hype going on at the moment about Ireland versus South Africa and world number one versus double World Cup champions. Within the team though, is there any sort of talk about how, sure, we've won 2 World Cups, but we haven't beaten Ireland for a long while, we need to kind of prove ourselves against them, or a sense of, you know, we need to show them that they're not number one, we are?
I think it's the normal standard for a Springbok side. We pride ourselves on winning test matches, and I think that's something we don't dwell too much on number 1 or number 2 and whatsoever. But yeah, the World Cup it's in the past now, and we're looking forward to a test match on Saturday. And I think that's where the whole squad is.
Tony, there's obviously the immediate focus of now on Ireland and then the Rugby Championship. But over the course of the next 4 years, in 4 years' time, when you get to that World Cup, where do you want this backline to be?
Oh, it's a big question. I think short term, you know, we want to attack a lot better than we have previously. That's my job, is to create a style of game that these boys can play really, really well. And the game changes so fast, and my job is to try and find a competitive edge that sort of keeps Springboks at the top of the world. And in 4 years' time, that's 100% the goal, is to win 3 World Cups in a row.
And then just following up on that, Rassie said you've been working a bit with the goal kickers as well. Obviously, the last 2 games against Ireland, goal kicking was a huge factor in the result. Just your thoughts on where they are now in terms of confidence?
Yeah, no, they're all confident goal kickers. You know, obviously Marnie's had a few issues recent times, but you know, when he practices, he's quality goal kicker. So it's a matter of him getting a little bit more comfortable on the big stage, and you know, I'm sure he can fix that pretty quickly. And then, you know, the other 2 boys are pretty good.
Let's take the last English question, guys, and then we're going to switch to Afrikaans because we're running out of time. And then if there's time again, we'll come back to English. So last question in English for now.
What difference do you see between Ireland of 2019 and Ireland of today?
I think in 2019, when I coached against Ireland for Japan, they had a bit of a sort of aging team, and they had a few injuries. You know, Johnny Sexton was injured, Carney was injured, so a few of their key players weren't at the top of their game. I feel as though they've sort of rectified all those problems. Gibson Park's been massive for them as a 9. I think he plays the game faster than Conor Murray, so it's allowed Ireland to be quite dominant and play the game at speed.
Stevie, good transition. Let's get into the rugby this weekend, and it is the big test match we've all been waiting for: South Africa versus Ireland at Loftus.
Yeah, listen, it doesn't get any bigger than this. And I've been in the various camps over the last few weeks, and I'll tell you what, very interesting how calm and relaxed both camps are. Yesterday I was up the road, taken to the Irish guys. Paul O'Connell, the forwards coach, gave a press conference, as did Calvin Nash, and very, very relaxed. Paul O'Connell, actually, I mean, it's a very cool press conference that's come up on the channel this morning. He was asked about the Rassie Erasmus media antics, and he said, he actually made a good joke. He said, well, in all fairness, if we had won the World Cup, people probably would also be asking us to come on podcast, but nobody wants to speak to us. So, which I thought was not wrong, but you know, it was good of him to acknowledge that basically he's like, well, these guys are going to have to do a lot of media because they've won a World Cup. And he said that credit to Rusty. He said the life of a head coach is so hectic. He says you've got to try and find a way to make it fun, and he does do the media, and he enjoys it, and he's really good at it. So it was quite funny how he sort of played it off, because we all get so, and world rugby, the world sort of media gets so obsessed with the Rassie Erasmus media stuff, and so many fans hate it, and you've got the Irish guy going, he's good at it, whatever, it's fun. So interesting that they played it off there. Rassie Erasmus, if you haven't watched that press conference yesterday, could not have been in a better mood. Have you heard the joke about the Sharks that he made?
Yes. No, Sharksmen taking up their positions, and they all went underneath the poles, having conceded or lost 8 games on the trot.
Yeah,
It's unbelievable banter from him. And the only person who could probably say that while sitting next to Eben
Smith. Yeah, exactly. Even made a bit of a chirp about how much money Eben makes. So it's been a very interesting environment because it has been so relaxed. We are obviously quite early in the week. Be interested to see how things sort of go. I've got Andy Farrell on tomorrow evening, which is going to be fun, and then obviously Sia Khaleesi's one D Stick show on Friday. So, look, it's definitely ramped.
You have if you're a world champion and haven't lost in a while, right? Like imagine Warren Gatlin now going up to a press conference off the back of 8 losses with
and
Wales.
Talking about how bad the flipping the Dragons were this season, dude. He probably would, to be fair, but he would do it in such a different way. He'd be like, look what I'm dealing with. I've got this shit team that can't win like more than 2 URC games, and now you're expecting me like to beat Australia away. Like, come on, Alex.
Yeah, his isn't sarcasm, unfortunately.
But John, I think it's gonna be. I mean, look. I mean, yesterday SuperSport dropped a whole hype video that the Springboks, in collaboration with the Springboks, about the whole new rivalry. It's been interesting. I'm very interested to see
the zombie tour. Hey, Stevie.
Yeah, the zombie tour, which I want to chat a bit about because there's a couple of articles where the Irish fans have warned, in inverted commas, South Africans not to sing the Rassie song. And it's a very interesting scenario because it's a bit like the singing Swing Low Sweet Chariot in the England Stadium, and people sort of say that it's not very appropriate to sing these days. So a lot of the Irish fans are quite upset by the taking of the song Zombie, which they sing, and turning into Rassie. The reason being that there are quite a lot of sort of cultural associations with the zombie and the relevance about that, and
yeah, there was
an interesting.
It's a protest song against a bombing that happened, I believe, from the Irish Armed Forces in the conflict between North and Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, and there were 2 people that died in these bombings. Two children died in these bombings, and the song is kind of an ode to that. And I mean, Ireland rugby in of itself is, I think, the only Irish sport where Northern Ireland and Republic of Ireland actually play together, which is why they sing their national anthem is like Ireland together standing tall, because it's a testament to both countries kind of coming together. And yeah, as you mentioned, the kind of the sweet low or Swing Low Sweet Chariot is also got some different historical kind of background. The reality is, I just don't think. I think it's gone past that stage, unfortunately. And the only way I see it not happening, because I know the fans will sing it. I heard it in Twickenham last weekend.
The Rassie song, as opposed to Zombie itself.
The Rassie song.
Yeah.
I saw it. I heard it just being sung by the crowd. With no prompt whatsoever. So that's going to happen with no prompt whatsoever. Whether they play it over the big speaker and maybe some powers that be, kind of relay a message to be like, listen, we're not going to play it. I imagine it is going to get played, though. It absolutely is.
Yeah, I don't think, especially the Loftus DJ has come under a bit of fire lately. I don't think he's got quite the I don't think he's clued up enough to understand the potential ramifications of it to not play it. It'll be one of those things that'll definitely get played. It's an interesting situation, isn't it? Look, to be fair, there has been criticism even for the fact that the Irish fans sing it, and that it has become a bit of a rugby anthem, which some people are saying sort of trivializes the meaning of the song. My controversial opinion is I don't particularly like the Rassie song because I've just heard it so many effing times. Going around France, and like every single bar to this, to that, coming back, and every single bar, and it gets sung, so it's just been sung
you
to
say
death.
that, but then you've had 2 pints, and then all of a sudden, it's impossible not to sing.
Well, we'll see this weekend. I think if Ireland do go out and hammer us, maybe we might not be singing it for much longer.
The winner earns the right to sing the song, right? I think the song is going to be sung regardless. Like, you can,
You're certainly not stopping the South Africans from singing it. Put it that way.
You absolutely aren't, and I think there's maybe an acknowledgement of like its significance, but everyone's saying, well, like, this is being sung it's been sung for a long time, and or it's more that it's just picked on and it's become bigger than the song itself. And it's almost like this is how we defend Rassie, this the Messiah himself, and this literally, every single Springbok fan in Loftus does view Rassie as exactly that. So it's going to be hard to persuade him otherwise, but. Stevie, let's quickly get into the lineups and or what's been announced for the weekend. We don't have the Ireland team. We do have
we
Rassie
do
Erasmus
the Ireland team. Yeah, I was about to say we've got the Ireland team that Rassie Erasmus is expecting. And to be fair, everyone's talking about he's the genius. He's predicted the Ireland team. If you do believe that, then you haven't been watching Ireland, because a 5-year-old could predict that Ireland team. One thing about Andy Farrell is that he does not adjust to other teams. He's got his 23 and. We basically can pick it.
He also did this with England at the semi-final of the World Cup.
Yeah.
He also predicted their team. It's not unlike him.
The England prediction was more fun, because then they were still sort of playing around with what's going to happen, for example.
Yeah.
Whereas this Irish team,
England,
it's not. I mean, Andy Farrell's not going to suddenly put Dan Sheeran on the bench this weekend and be like, "Oh, that's a big one," and he's not going to suddenly bring Josh van der Flier off the bench and be like, "Oh, that's like a bomb squad." We know what the Ireland team is going to be this weekend. The only call inverted commas is going to be Craig Casey or Conor Murray to start, but I think it's inevitable Craig Casey will start, because he's the closest to a Jamison Gibson Park alternative.
I also think it's quite funny, because I think it's a bit of a spite at all other coaches, just to show them how much flexibility he has, and how he never picks the same team twice already. We did see some consistency, and this team is probably the most consistent one we saw.
Yeah, I was about to say, because at the same time, we've also picked the second most experienced team ever.
Yeah.
So it's not like there's not a lot of new faces this weekend. There are some, but
even the fact that we picked the most experienced team, there are still surprises in there.
Surprises on the bench. I think the only surprise in the starting lineup was going to be Bongio Malcolm to start, and he was going to be at 8.
Yeah. Well, let's get into it, Stevie. We've got Ox, Bongi, and France on that front row. As you said, Bongi selected to start over Malcolm, which was the inverse during Wales. Then we've got Eben and Franco Mostert in the 4-5 combination. We've got 6, Captain Sia Khaleesi, as we predicted a couple of weeks ago. So we are unbelievably glad to have him back, and just can't wait to hear the reception that he gets just back in South Africa. It's going to be huge. And then at 7, Peter Steph du Toit. 8 is the big one in Kwagga Smith, retiring from the bomb squad and now into the starting lineup. It'll be interesting to see how many minutes he gets through. 9, 10 is the classic Faf 100 Pollard combination. And then the back line is as normal as it gets. Curtly Arendse coming back miraculously quickly from that cheekbone injury. Then he's paired up with Cheslin Colby at 14 on the other wing, with Willie Leroux at the back, coming in, having just off the back of that URC final, and then the centre pairing, which is going to equal the record of Jean de Villiers and Jacques Ferry in Jesse Kriel and Damien Dialindi in 13 and 12.
I'm not sure I'm ready for, by the way, I'm not sure I'm ready for there to be a centre pairing with more caps than Ferry and de Villiers. That's quite emotional for me.
It is, and also
that was my childhood.
And even if Lucanio was picked with
Damien
Dialindi, they would have
equaled it.
Would have gone ahead. So the
fact that Jacques and Jacques could be down to third within a matter of 3 or 4 tests is also it's a pretty emotional one for me. Those are my boys.
Yeah, no, that's just peak 2009 book supremacy. Jacques Ferry is just what a guy, what a player.
Yeah, the largest chest in rugby.
Yeah, yeah, and the best try I've ever seen scored for any Springbok. Stevie, let's jump straight into that number 8 discussion, and the big one is that Evan Roos has been left out, who's the natural 8 that everyone saw replacing. Obviously the retiring Dwayne Vermeulen and Jasper Wiese, who is on on a suspension right now because of a tip tackle. So he's not going to be playing at all this series. Evan Roos is the natural 8. Obviously, Kwacha has played a lot there. He played there a couple weekends ago. But that is the biggest surprise, I'd say.
Yeah, I think it is, but I think at the end of the day, we have to have a breakdown threat. We've got to slow down that Irish ruck speed. And I think there's two things. I think slowing down the Irish ruck speed from a breakdown point of view, when you don't have Malcolm Mark starting, you need that fixture. You've also got no Stephen Kitsoff. I think that's made a big difference. So you don't have him as an extra fetcher, because you all know, despite being a prop, he's one of the best fetchers in that team.
Yeah.
The breakdowns are going to be incredibly important. It's been mentioned in the various press conferences, for example. It's why you've got a Markov and starting on the bench as well. Instead of going for somebody like a Ben Jason Dixon, for example, who's maybe a bit more versatile, or going with an Evan Roos as a natural 8 replacement. So, I also think that, Evan Roos I think he had a decent game against Wales, but I think he had a very non-Springbok 8th man game in terms of that. They always talk about their battle stats, and that being more than just running 50 meters with the ball and making line breaks. A number 8 for the box always characteristically carried very strong into contact, been very reliable under the high ball, for example, usually and hitting a lot of rucks and wearing down opposition. And Evan Roos is a very different type of 8 from that. He loves to be in around the fringes, for example, loves to get himself into a bit of space, and I think that it'll be the rucks, and also I think the massive thing for Kwagga Smith is his defense, his scramble defense. This Ireland team, it's going to be such a nerve-wracking watch, and we've seen it before, because they are going to break our line several times this weekend. That's going to happen. With the attacking shape, the way they play the game, they will be breaking our line several times, and having that sort of scramble defense is going to be massive, and that's where somebody like Kwagga Smith comes into his own. He's got so much pace around the park. It is interesting not having a genuine replacement for him. He's the only one there who, is a genuine 8 option. He's played once there this season for Racing.
Yeah, you could probably slot in Markov and Staden if you wanted to. But yeah, as you said, not a genuine 8. But I mean, we have seen this is what. And what's interesting is even Evan Roos actually started playing a bit of 7 this year. And
we've seen Ulrich Lowe, for example, play 7 and 8. We've seen Pepsi playing 8 and 6. Evan Roos actually playing a lot at 6 as well. So we've seen all these guys sort of starting to play in different positions, because we all know that, especially in the Springbok side, versatility is what gets you through. There's a certain Sasha Famagomazulu in that number 23 jersey who is there. I want to say simply there, but he is there because he is a utility player. If it was just a case of wanting a fly-off on the bench, it would have been Moni Liebach.
Yeah. No, exactly. And let's get into Sasha, because he has jumped the gun and become that extra. There's always the scrum off, and then there's one extra who is going to be that extra person. It has been Money before. Sometimes it's been Villy. When usually it was actually, I think it was really at the World Cup.
But only if Damien Williams is starting.
Only if Damien Williams was starting. That's what I was going to say. Obviously, Damien being injured now, Villy slotted naturally to that 15th position. And there is that extra space on the bench. Sasha being able to cover 10, 12, and I guess 15 and any of the wings. So it's literally just 9 and 13 that he probably could play 13, I guess.
Probably play 9.
Probably play 9 as well. And the big one is also goal kicking responsibilities. If Andre does go down, or if he's the one to get subbed, he can take those on, and we know how good of a goal kicker he is. So I think having both of those in to be so versatile, but also then to have that X factor thing on top of that to say, oh yeah, but I'm also like an 80% goal kicker. That gives a lot of good reason for someone like Rassie to put his faith in you. So props to him. He had only about 15 minutes in that Wales game to make a point, and he made that point enough to be able to earn the 20 match day 23 versus Ireland, which I think very, very few would have predicted.
Yeah. No, I think it's so cool to see. I mean, we obviously know that this kid is special. And you listen to an interview, for example, and you can't not like him. But I think it's interesting how many people have freaked out by the lack of youth and experimentation that we're doing, which also, by the way, blows my mind. This whole thing of, but we're basically just the 2019 team. We've got all this depth. We're only going to see it. There's so many players not getting capped. Am I the only one that wants to win this weekend? and like beat Ireland twice. And everybody's like, yeah, but this is the team that like has been since 2019. I was like, oh, so the team that's won 2 World Cups and the British and Irish Lions series. They can't be that shit.
Yeah.
If that's the history, you know.
Yeah, we spoke about this I think at the end of the last World Cup, in that it's interesting to see who makes the next World Cup cycle, and is that's why like there was even there are a lot of question marks about a lot of these players and are they going to make it. You just like Eben, Franco Sia, and Peter Steff and France, and Bongi, for example. That's 2 to 7. They all may or may not make it to the next World Cup, but they all could, and they're all world-class players. So if they are fit, they will be picked, but we just don't know whether they'll be fit because they'll be at an age where they're probably getting more injuries and maybe form starts dipping as well. But, all things considered, they will stay well. But one thing that Rassie has said is that, the difference between, I think, previously is, he's always gone and said, it's all about World Cups. And he said that recently I'd rather win, 2 World Cups in a British Irish Lions series than, and then lose 3 other games. But,
which I've actually got a video coming out on my personal channel, which is a bit of a gripe I've got moving forward, because I think that's something we need to change.
But they have alluded to that as well, and wanting to improve, I think, form between tournaments as well, and to win a couple rugby championships. There's nothing I want more now than just a bloody rugby championship, because it feels like we only win it when it's like some shortened version of it, and then we're celebrating in Argentina.
Yeah. And I think we talk about the great All Black side, that sort of 2011, 2017, and they collected every bloody rugby championship going, and all the Bledisloe Cups and the 2 World Cups and I think that everyone's saying, yeah, but we win the World Cup, which is what matters. And my attitude is, but we're good enough to do both. We're good enough to be competitive in between World Cups while still contending and winning potential World Cups. So I do think we're going to see more sort of integration, but why must we press reset for the biggest match against Ireland, arguably ever, in terms of being a proper, genuine grudge match, an Ireland side we haven't beaten for many years? Why throw the baby out with the bathwater? I mean, we've still got players like
Peter Steff.
Exactly. And you're just going to say to Pollard, well, you're actually done because, we need to see the new fly halves. And you're going to go and throw France by Herbo away. I mean, you've still got players who very easy make the next World Cup in an Oxenshire, a Kirtley Orange, a Jesse Creel, off the bench, Malcolm Marks, Kieran Steenekamp, Samuel Murat, Archie Steven, Grant Williams, Stefan Gomez. There's still a good 10 players who definitely make the next World Cup, which is almost half the team.
Which is why we also have a 39-man squad.
Which is actually a 46-man squad, when they're going to Durban, for example, Sia Masuku, Intutuka Tunu, they will come and train with the Boks because they're based in Durban.
Yeah, so we've seen signs, particularly from, the Wales team of kind of who the next gen is. I'd say the biggest worries are probably in the middle of the park, actually in 12-13, because we haven't had anyone else. We mentioned, Dylan, Jesse, and Lucanio. Lucanio's still got time and he's got years, but and the others don't look like they're slowing down at all. But I think if they were to be too big,
good luck telling Jesse Creel the way he looks that he's old.
Yeah. No, I mean,
at 30 years old, I mean, for me, he'll be around the next World Cup.
And I think he'll end up with 100 caps.
Yeah, well, I think also what people also mistake is just because the guy's been around doesn't mean he's necessarily old. Somebody like a Malcolm Marks easily makes the next World Cup. Andre Pollard makes the next World Cup. Jesse Creel makes the next World Cup. Just because they've got
debuting 21.
Exactly. We forget how young some of these guys were when they started. I mean, that's like saying, for example, we take Sasha Gomez to the next World Cup, and then, at 29 years old, you'd be like, okay, well, you need to be moved on because we've got to go find a 21-year-old now. And you think about Dwayne Vermeulen and the rugby he was playing last year at 37, 38 years old. Dion Free and the performance he put in. I'm sorry, Johnny Sexton last year. There are players who are rewriting, Sam Whitelock and Brody Retallick playing last year at, I think, one of the oldest combinations ever and still one of the most dominant. Well, so I think we get far too obsessed with age. I think this whole sort of bidding players at 30 is wild for me.
Let's jump into then the big one in that we've obviously chatted about, Sasha, but now also Gerard Steenkamp. He's been brought in. This is, I feel like, his first
this is a test.
Massive test.
Yeah.
Real.
I think came off the bench against Argentina in Argentina, in a game which he kind of was more like an obligation game. We have to go over there and play it.
So I think that's very exciting. I'm excited. Also, obviously, a big island pack as well. They are dominant. They are physical. So he'll be joined by Vincent Koch on the bench. The main man who we've spoken about previously, who seems to get a nod in without many questions or man of the match performances, Salman Murat.
Yeah,
the
that's who locks the bench.
Salman Murat. It's a case of in Rassie we trust at this stage because we have no reason to we haven't seen any form to show that he's like as good as anyone else, but we know he's absolutely massive. He's a good jumper. He's capable. But
we know of the talent. We just haven't seen it really materialize in consistency.
Yeah, and unlike others, he gets to earn himself that spot whilst wearing green and gold. But it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, 2 locks in him and Achia Sneeman coming off the bench. That means Franco Mostad will probably shift to the flank in place of probably Sia, and then Sia coming off, or Mark van Staden potentially starting in for Peter Steff as well. Stevie, also you did allude, to be fair, that this might change. And another classic Rassie move, that there have been a couple niggles, so this might change to a 7-1. There's rumours that Cheslin might still not be 100%. What do you think the possibilities of those are?
Well, it's an interesting one, especially talking about the fact that Cheslin might not be fit, because Cheslin was the one that kind of enabled that 7-1 split, because he was going to be slotted into number 9 if we were to go when we went that route for in the final. So the weird thing for me is that if it's Cheslin that's the doubt, and we then go to 7-1, that would then mean starting Grant Williams on the wing. Now, would you start Grant Williams on the wing ahead of an Edwin van der Merwe, for example?
No.
I personally wouldn't.
No.
For me, it would make more sense if they said, Vili's a bit of a risk. But even then, what are you going to do? Start Sasha and have just Ace come off on the bench? Yeah, so it's a weird one for me to sort of allude that there could be a 7-1 possibility, because I think, Chasing somebody that unlocks that idea of a 7-1, unless they are genuinely thinking about Grant Williams, or else you starting like a Sasha and just having Ace come off on the bench. So it's a bit of a weird one for me. I'm a bit confused as to how that might work.
Anyways, let's speculate no longer, but really looking forward to that.
Hello, and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports. Rassie Erasmus has announced his team to take on Ireland this weekend, with the big news being Sasha Famengomazulu will be part of the 23 after being named on the bench. A 6-2 split. Bomb squad time it is for the Boks against Ireland at Loftus. Kickoff at 5 o'clock. And Sia Khaleesi back to captain. Andre Pollard back with the keys at 10, and set to be an absolutely seismic clash. Some big news is Kwaka Smith starting at 8. No Evan Hurst, for example. Gerard Stennekamp will get his opportunity as well. Malcolm Marx forming part of the bomb squad. A very experienced side, and a side which I think has all it needs, really, with regards to a mixture of experience and sort of BMT and physicality at the worst. Basically, I think it needs to beat what is a very, very good Irish side. Let's get into it, shall we? So in terms of the starting lineup, this is how we do line up. In the front row, it is Recheka Baditwe, Ox in chair, next to Bongi Minambi and Frans Malherbe in that starting front row. Yesterday, when I did my predicted team, I had Malcolm Marx to start. I wondered if they might be a little bit worried about his fitness, and they always like to sort of be able to remove a player rather than sort of put him on, if that is the case. But he will form part of the bomb squad. We have seen this combination of Bongi Minambi starting, Malcolm Marx coming off the bench quite a lot in the last sort of 4 or 5 years. So nothing too much to panic about there. The expected lock combination of Eben Etzebeth next to Franco Mostad, incredible amount of experience in that tight 5. In fact, Bongi Minambi being Oxenchera being the only one to have fewer than 50 caps with the Irish squad for the last couple of years. So he knows what he's talking about. And I think that's what's made Ireland so successful, is that they have, to a certain degree, they have stopped focusing on everybody else and just said, right, how do we just become the best team we can be? And it's the other team's jobs really to try and stop us. And a lot of other teams have struggled to stop that. So yeah, I think it's quite a good way of doing it. I don't personally have much of an issue with it, and I think it's quite healthy actually, to be perfectly honest. So yeah, Egbert is injured. Matthew Dixon saying, I don't think RSA fans appreciate Bok Rugby is, and Francois Best saying, Nehanda needs 2 or 3 games of box to prove himself. I think he would improve our attacking play. He might get opportunities, Nehanda. I think there'll have to be a couple of injuries. But let's wait and see. I think that he'll, if he ever plays the box, he'll be more at 9. I don't think he'll ever play a box game at 10. And I don't want to be that person to say, oh, he's too small, whatever, but I think he is very, very small. So yeah, I think that's also, I think it's played a big part. You know, you look at how good defensively Jordan Hendricks is, you're not getting the same thing with Nehanda, unfortunately. But we'll wait and see. People, we're gonna sign off there. As I said, Paulo Coelho press conference coming up very soon. Very shortly, kept it out on the channel as well. We've got the Rassie Erasmus press conference up as well, so go and check that out. Let me know what you think of the team if you're watching this retrospectively in the comments below. If you are new and watching, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And yeah, join us over the week. Various different press conferences coming up throughout the week, and we'll have them all here on Forever Sports. So this is the place to be. Thank you very much.
They have beaten you. Raggie's been on Twitter trying to name your team, things like that. Has that impacted you guys in any way? Have you found it unusual at all?
I haven't found it unusual. I think if we'd won the World Cup, we'd probably end up getting asked to go on a few podcasts as well. No one wants us to go on it, so it is what it is, you know. I come across bits and pieces of it. We haven't spoken about it a lot. We never tend to do around this kind of thing. It tends to become a reaction. I think, you know, if you're a head coach as long as Rassie is, you probably end up. You have to figure out a way to enjoy doing the media stuff, and he seems to enjoy it, and he's good at it. So we haven't paid a lot of attention to it.
You played in one of the most intense, greatest games ever played in the stadium a long time ago. Certainly not bad memory, but like. Will you lean on that experience at all to prepare players for what's coming? Because if the team are as up for it, the fans are going to be as up for it, and it is quite a unique venue.
We wouldn't really lean on that experience, no. We'd lean on past experiences ourselves because, you know, we're always trying to evolve, we're always trying to get better, we're always trying to, you know, learn from the past so that it can help us go forward. And, you know, I think... I wouldn't say it's not relevant. You know what the place is going to be like. It's a fantastic stadium. It has a brilliant tradition of rugby. Their fans absolutely love it. They love playing a part in the game. So you know, you have to be aware of that. But for us, it's about focusing on ourselves as much as possible. And when we do that, we tend to do all right. You know, I think when teams become distracted by the noise outside. It becomes exactly that, a distraction. So we're just trying to steer clear of it.
Last time we came into the international window, everyone was tipping France to win that game. You guys came in quiet, delivered a statement performance. Does that give you comfort that you can do the same again, despite the fact that the players have suffered some disappointment recently and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I think, you know, I was saying about South Africa, the fact that they, you know, continuity is always a big helper, and we have that. You know, we've certainly, there's some players aren't here that would be, you know, important part of what we do, but you have a continuity of coaching, you have a continuity of leadership within the group, continuity of ideas. You're trying to evolve them for sure, but you know, it is a real challenge in international rugby, is trying to come in and trying to perform well with a relatively small preparation window. You know, in the Six Nations, 4 or 5 weeks in, you should know what you're about for sure, but it is a real challenge coming in, especially when you get the players after playing in Europe on a Saturday or Sunday. You get them on a Monday morning, and you're conscious of how much information you put into them, but the continuity certainly helps us, and it's helped us start quite well in recent times.
It's a very established squad, but you've got one very talented new forward in there with Cormac. Can you just tell us how he's kind of gone, how he's earned his place in here, and what can you hope to get out of him?
Yeah, well, we had him on the emergent tour, and he's a real good specimen, really eager young fella, hungry to learn. And in fairness to Richie and Ulster, they just backed him towards the end of the season, and I think we found that on the emergent tour. There's a lot of players there that when they get their chance, they're more than capable of delivering. So he's a fantastic specimen. He's a big heavy man, but he moves really quick, he accelerates really well, and I think it's so important now for an international forward to be able to move well and accelerate. Whether it's a breakdown, whether it's a kick chase, whether it's a little half gap you get on a small little pass, and it gets you through the hole. It really can make the difference. So anytime you have an athlete like that who is then on top of it is a great trainer, a good guy, willing to learn, eager, it's a great opportunity for us. And for him to come along here, train with us, try and force his way into the side, see how some of the older guys who've been doing it a long time, see how they prepare. It's brilliant for him, and because he has it, he has the football, and he has the work ethic to be able to look at what they're doing, copy paste and edit it, and add it to his game.
Thanks, John. Knowing Jerry Flannery as well as you do, what do you expect from him personality-wise? That he'll bring to the Springboks, and the dimension that he'll add, just as from the person as much as the coach.
Yeah, I think he'll love it. He'll love the opportunity to work with the Springboks and to work with Rassie again, to work with quality players who are unbelievably eager, that want to make it work, that want to make your plan work. I would say it doesn't matter where he works, he'd love coaching, he'd love trying to bring an energy and an enthusiasm to how a team defends and how a team plays the game. And I think, I haven't seen him coaching a lot. I'm sure he's a great coach, but I'm sure the energy he brings to it would be half the job done, and the integrity he'd bring to it, and the kind of honesty of effort he'd bring to it. So, he's a brilliant guy, and I'd say it comes through in his coaching, and he'll be a brilliant addition to South Africa.
Do you get a sense in weeks like this, say when you were going down to New Zealand that week of the first test, that the team is coming together, that you just get a sense that it's tight, it's good, training's good, there's a feeling within the camp?
Yeah, I find my senses for that is generally off, When I think it's bad, it's good, and when I think it's good, it's bad. You just gotta keep doing the job as well as you can. Keep chatting to the coaches, keep chatting to the players, and trying to get a feel for when you need to step in or step back. And as a young coach, it's a hard thing to figure out. So you kind of lean on Andy a bit, but I like the way the players prepare at the moment. We've continuity in what we do, and I like how they figure things out themselves. They're never overly coach-led, these guys. They figure a lot of the stuff out themselves. So sometimes the feeling you might have as a coach is kind of irrelevant. They're the ones that are really figuring it out.
With Rassie picking a very similar side to the final in the World Cup, and all of those World Cup players in that team for this weekend, are you expecting something similar for the Springboks, or do you think he's got another arrow in his quiver? He's got new coaches around him. Compared to that game, what do you expect from them?
Well, it was a little bit different last week. You saw some of the stuff that maybe Tony Brown had been doing with Japan. You saw South Africa doing that last week. They probably played a little bit more, and I would say, South Africa always have the ability to dial up what they were doing maybe 3 or 4 years ago, or dial it down. So that's what you have to prepare for them. Rassie played a certain way in Munster when he was there. He played a certain way in South Africa when he took him over at the start, and they probably evolved that over the last few years, and Tony Brown was probably a big part of evolving it again. So I would say they probably have a few ways of playing, and they can dial them up and dial them down based on what they feel for any particular day. And we probably have to expect a whole number of things against them. But I think they have a real good identity. They're probably trying to evolve that with Tony Brown and trying to add a few layers to it. But I can't see them moving massively away from what they stand for.
The stadium is known for the ball that flies. There's not a lot of wind, hardly ever. So it's good temperatures. Do you expect them to use that to their advantage and maybe play more of a kicking game than they normally do?
I don't know is the honest answer. I think with the length the ball goes, with the temperatures, you'd be mad not to kick, at least as much as you were or a little bit more. So, I know the Bulls kick quite a lot when they play. They made a real good job of it when they were playing against Leinster the other week. They probably kicked a little bit more more often and for a little bit more distance than they normally did. So, you got to be aware of what might happen, but expect anything.
Last question.
Winning the Six Nations help to put the World Cup heartbreak behind you, and is it ever possible to recover from that?
Yeah, you recover from it. You just got to move on to the next thing. We'd love to have done better in the World Cup, but we came up across a really good side that played really well, particularly at the start of the game. We gave ourselves a big mountain to climb. We climbed most of it, but just didn't get the last bit there. But then it's just on to the next competition, and we had a bit of a turnover of players, Johnny in particular, moving on. So we'd love to have won the Grand Slam. We could have done it. We mightn't have deserved to have won it, but we could have done it. But going on to win the Six Nations, especially with a little bit of a turnover in the team, was excellent. But it's funny how the game goes. The boys really celebrate and really enjoy any victory they have with any team. But you've got to move on quickly then, and the next thing becomes the biggest, most important thing ever. So, we've never won a Test series in South Africa. I think as an Irish team, we've only ever won one game down here. So, this is a brilliant place for this team to be now.
Sorry, last question here. I need to get Paul
Also, just a lot will be made of Jerry being in the Springbok camp, but the fact that so many of your players are coached by Jacques Nienaber and have learned the system that he built up, presumably, does that help at all that they know a little bit more about what they're facing?
I think it helps our players in that, I think one of the things that I notice for us is the better the coaching is in the provinces, the better the players are coming into us, and they've added another layer to how they defend and how they think about the game in the last year with Jacques, and that's been a brilliant addition to them. And he's been very forthcoming with the information around. He's all in with them, which is brilliant. He's been very forthcoming about the information around what they did and how they did it. And our boys share a little bit of that with us. Some of it is helpful to us. Some of it is, can be a bit of a distraction because we've got to focus on what's important to us. Because I remember back in the day, we used to spend a lot of time on opposition teams, and it can be a distraction because you've got to get right what you're doing right. And we struck that balance right in recent years, and it's important we continue with that.
Thanks, Paul.
Hello everybody and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports. For today's Springbok, a bit of an analysis video talking about the Springbok team that Rassie Erasmus has selected and looking at why he has made some of the decisions he has and why he has picked some of the players he has. Basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at the way Ireland play, for example, what has made them so successful, a bit of a comparison on kind of the way these teams play, because we're probably talking about the best attacking team in the world, versus the best defensive team in the world. So Ireland score tries for fun. We know this. They are an attacking machine. They really are. And you can either choose to ignore that, or you can embrace it and say, right, we all know that Ireland are probably the best attacking team in the world. They've got the stats to prove it. How do you stop that? Well, you put them against the best defensive team in the world, who score the fewest tries, for example, and have got one of the best defensive systems World Rugby has ever really seen, in the form of the Springboks. And again, Springbok fans, you can either embrace the fact that we're a great defensive team, or you could try and deny it. I, for one, choose to embrace it and talk about the fact that I think that's what's made us so impressive in the past. For example, it's won us World Cups, and I don't see why we need to move away from that or be scared of admitting that. So let's have a look, for example, at the team, shall we? Which is the team that Rassie Erasmus has picked. Now, the big interesting selections are the following. Kwagga Smith at 8. Malcolm Marx off the bench. Marco van Staden off the bench. Very interesting selections with regards to, first of all, Malcolm Marx coming back from injury. We wondered if he might start, whether he might come off the bench. I think if he was playing his best rugby and been playing consistently, I think he probably would have started. They would have tried to get out sort of 60 minutes out of him. I do think we're going to get Bongi and we give him a 40-minute run, and Malcolm Marx will probably get much the same amount of time. The big one is everybody's sort of wondering why Kwagga Smith, not an Evan Lewis. This for me is an Ireland call. As much as we are a team that likes to focus on ourselves, Kwagga Smith, for me, starting Malcolm Staden on the bench is the battle of the breakdown. And how you try and beat Ireland is you've got to slow things down, and you've got to try and disrupt the way they play. And we're going to go through some of the stats and talk about what that kind of means. And I think that's the big indication for me about this is that Marco van Staden selection on the bench. Not that he's, for example, as good over the ball as a Kwagga Smith, but you've got players in Malcolm Marx, Marco van Staden coming on off the bench who are fetchers, who are good on the ground. And in the starting lineup, you're going to rely a lot on Kwagga Smith, who I think had the most turnovers in World Rugby last year, in international rugby. You're going to have to rely on Siya Kolisi doing a lot of breakdown work as well. And you're going to need to see, for example, something like Damon Lindy in the midfield. In fact, actually, both 12s, we expect Bandiaki to be named a 12 this weekend. Both 12s, very, very good. In fact, quite similar type of players in many ways in terms of the really physical carrying ability, but also they're really good in terms of the sort of kind of the battle stats. They hit a lot of rucks. They're very good at the breakdown. Both of them very good over the ball. So I'm very much looking forward to that kind of battle. Now, I think Kwagga Smith is the very interesting pick, isn't he? And this is one of the major reasons I think he is picked. Two things, for example. First of all, turnover king. He is so good on the ground. 10 turnovers during the Rugby World Cup, averaging more than a turnover per game, which is incredible when you consider that he came off the bench for a majority of the World Cup. I mean, he played just an average of less than 40 minutes. So, he's playing less than a half of rugby during the World Cup, and yet averaging basically 2 turnovers a game. So, if he were to play full 80s, for example, then that would probably be double, and you'd be looking at almost sort of 3 to 4 turnovers during the game. So that's how good he is on the ground. Also, very importantly, defensively, might not be the same sort of physical presence as a Jasper Wiese, a Dwayne Vermeulen, for example. But from an attack point of view, does know how to score points, does score tries. But I think what's very important over here is he is very good defensively. Missed just 2 tackles during the World Cup, 32 tackles made. It's that scramble defense, his pace across the park, which I think sets him apart potentially this weekend. Ireland, and we're going to look at their stats, will break past the Springbok lines. That's going to happen. We will have scramble defense. The likes of a JC Kriel, I think, is going to be incredibly important this weekend. Kirkley Orense, Ches and Cole will be incredibly important. Kwagga Smith, arguably maybe even the most important. I mean, we all think about that incredible sort of desperate scrambled tackle by Warren Whiteley against the All Blacks. I think it was back in 2017, 2018 could have been. And no, I don't think any other player in the current squad could do that except for Kwagga Smith in terms of having the pace and the athleticism to be able to get back and make that kind of last-ditch tackle. Let's have a look at Ireland, for example. And what we're going to do is we're going to start by looking at the key stats between the two teams. So we're going to move into this screen over here. Right, there we go. This is during the World Cup, by the way. Basically, a comparison of Ireland versus South Africa from the World Cup, looking at some of the key stats. Now, interestingly enough, obviously, the big thing to consider in these stats is that the Springboks did play 2 more games. So that some of the stats will be slightly inflated, but that's just kind of the way the cookie crumbles. So still, despite playing 2 more games, conceded fewer tries, scored fewer tries, for example, as well as fewer points. Ireland score points. That's what they do. They run their opposition rugby pretty early. They score points. They kind of outscore you. You look at tackles completed, Ireland with a higher percentage, but when we look at the defense, Springboks defensive system does not rely on first-time tackles. It relies on stopping the momentum, the kind of hits. You know, if you've been around the block, you'll kind of know that. Ireland generally don't kick the ball a lot. We're going to look at that in the Six Nations. Compared to Springboks, who obviously do, Ireland play a lot of 10 as well. So if we look at, but the big thing for over here is Ireland don't lose the ball. They don't kick it away, for example, very often, and they are very good at the breakdown in terms of keeping the ball. And that, I think, is an area where the Springboks are really going to target this weekend. So we look at the attack, for example, Ireland carrying more than the Boks despite having those 2 or fewer games. Boks just running more meters. Clean breaks, Ireland have more. Offloads, more. Defenders beaten, more. Tries, more. Again, that's within there's 2 games fewer. So we are talking about an attacking giant. And over there, you kind of see going, well, that's like a non-comparison, and the Boks are nowhere near them. This is where the Boks come into their own. Look at the amount of tackles that they're making, and look at the dominant tackles. The physicality on display, that is the big thing from the Boks. Making more than double the amount of dominant tackles. Yes, playing 2 more games, but still double the amount of dominant tackles. Despite missing so many more tackles, Faf de Klerk, for example, is flying off this line, stopping the momentum, and then we're seeing big hits. So it's that kind of combination, isn't it? Stopping the momentum and then making those big hits, making yourself feel known. One thing about Ireland, for example, Springboks, by the way, didn't have a single card until the playoff stages. Fun fact. Penalties conceded, though, Ireland don't concede a lot of penalties, and that's an interesting one. So that was kind of a bit of a comparison of what we kind of did during the World Cup. Yes, it's a very basic comparison, but let's look at Ireland during the Six Nations, shall we? And we'll look at a couple of their key players as well. So this is the Six Nations website, all the statistics over there. I'm looking at the 24 edition, obviously. So this is the big thing. Ireland scoring 19 tries and more points than France, who, obviously had some big wins against various different teams like, in Italy and Wales, for example. But Ireland scoring lots of tries. Yeah, 3 teams tried in 13, Scotland with 12, Italy 9, Ireland way ahead with 19. That's a big thing from them. If you look at, obviously, then successful conversions, for example, despite not having the best goal kicking percentage, they had so many conversions that it was pretty easy to kind of notch up the most conversions. This is the big thing over here. They carry the ball a hell of a lot, and they get into the 22. They've got the best, I think when they looked at the World Cup, they had the best stat in terms of plays that results in them getting into the 22, or carries that results in them getting into the 22. Carrying a lot of meters. They keep ball in hand, they spread the ball left, right, and they make their way up the park with ball in hand rather than through the boot. Generally, they've got that sort of attacking shape, which creates so much space for them to get over the advantage line. Hence, topping the meters gained, topping the total passes also by quite a lot. They go left to right very quickly. Not necessarily the biggest offloaders, genuine passes, genuine sort of use of the space, lots of line breaks. They create those half gaps to get their players through. Which is something that the Boks really need to focus on. But this is what I mean in terms of your sort of kicks and play, not kicking as much as a lot of other teams, for example. Not to say that they don't kick, they do kick. And all teams kick, the best teams in the world kick. But it is not, their primary weapon, for example. Apart from that, for example, we look at breakdown steals, they're pretty good over there. This, for me, is one of the most important stats, is their ruck speed. And that's why I think, we've got 3 potential fetchers. Asiya Kalisi, who does really good work at the breakdown in terms of hitting rucks. We've got to slow down the ball. Thankfully, we're not going to have to worry about Jamison Gibson Park. Craig Casey expected to probably start. 56% of their rucks during the Six Nations were within 0 to 3 seconds. And after that, 26% of that between 4 to 6 seconds. So they're only 11% of their rucks are over 6 seconds. They use the ball quickly. They're not going to sit there, line everything up, look at exactly what's plotting, decide who's going, and then they go. Gibson Park, in particular, very decisive. Left, right, short, far. They move that ball. They are very mobile. They do get the ball moving around a lot. Scrum battle's going to be interesting. I think Andrew Porter on his day is a very good scrummager, but I think he gets away with a lot. So I think if that gets raised, for example, I think that we can have a really good go at that Irish scrum. The second most successful in the Six Nations, but I don't think it is foolproof. I think it can be had. And I think line-out steals over here are very important. Tygburn, Peter Omani, quality players at the lineouts, and that's going to be something we are going to have to contend with quite a lot. Let's look at some of their sort of key players, shall we? And the big news for me is the lack of Jamison Gibson Park. You got 3 try assists himself during that Six Nations. Dan Sheehan, top try scorer. Those are not all, by the way, more tries. He is somebody that likes to get in the mix and carries very well. Jack Crowley was the 3rd highest point scorer. Bandi Aki, Kellen Doris, obviously your big carriers in the midfield as well as off the back of the scrum. Kellen Doris is relentless. He's not necessarily as big and physical, I think, as a Jack Conan. Is a bit quicker, but carries so much and is pretty relentless. James Lowe is a big player for Ireland. Most meters carried, most meters gained. But a lot of that, again, was the space that was created by Jamison Gibson Park and the likes who do put themselves in such good positions over there. James Lowe topping up the line breaks as well, up and down the line breaks. This is an interesting one over here. You look at kicks in play, for example. James Lowe, the only non-scrum off or fly half involved in that. Gibson Park over there. And Jack Kite, quite far down when you look at the fact that, both the scrum off and fly half of Scotland up there. Finn Russell, Ben White, Thomas Williams up there. Alex Mitchell, George Ford up there. Garbizzi, Nagaric, and Thomas Ramos. So not the team that dominates sort of kicks in play, for example. Tackles made. Obviously, they're doing a lot of the attacks, so you don't often see a lot of Irish players in these sort of stats. This over here, if you look at the breakdown threats, for example, and the reason I pull this up, despite there not being that many, is that it does identify who the breakdown threats are. Josh Van der Fleer is very good on the ground. Bandi Aki is very good on the ground. Tygburn, despite being lock, flank, whatever he is phenomenal at the breakdown. And these players are some of the reasons that they get. First of all, they can steal the ball, but also very good at keeping the ball there as well. And the line-out steals, as I mentioned, Tygburn in that over there at the top there. In terms of your takes and your main, Tygburn as operator at the front. And as mentioned earlier, Peter Omani is always up there as well. So that gives you kind of a bit of an idea of some of their key players, as well as sort of the key areas that they focus on. And I think we very much have to slow the breakdown down and make sure Craig Casey's not getting clean service and quick service all in time. And same thing, I think we also need to try and steal that ball because they don't give it up a lot. If you look at the amount of phases, you look at that, 37 phase, or what, it was ridiculous when New Zealand had to defend in that World Cup quarterfinal. They are relentless with ball in hand, and they will happily go through 20, 25 phases, which kind of suits the box. You're kind of very much like, well, we'll tackle you 25, 26 times if we have to. So that's why it's a very interesting matchup, because we're looking at sort of two teams, not quite exact opposites, but I think we are looking at the best attacking team versus the best defensive team, a team that kicks off 9, a team that can play off 10 a lot. In Jack Crowley, Springboks don't play off 10 a lot. They don't often go and play off Pollard. Be interesting to see if we do play a bit more of 10 this weekend, for example. But a very interesting sort of small mini battles happening in the game. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Smash a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steve. I'll chat to you soon.
Been on training camps and stuff like that. This is your first fully fledged tour with the Irish team, I think. How are you finding it?
Yeah, good. I suppose same as any other camp, just throw myself in and get the connections built up again, I suppose, to the lads that you haven't seen in a while. But yeah, no, it's been class, obviously, to get over here and spend more time with the lads and get to know people more.
Who are you rooming with and what are they like?
Ollie Jaeger, he's actually a great roommate. Yeah, good bit of crack. So yeah, very good.
And how much more comfortable do you feel in the squad now compared to, say, this time 12 months ago? Now you've like a Six Nations campaign behind you, a handful of caps.
Yeah, the Six Nations helped me a lot, to be honest. Give me a lot more calmness, I suppose, coming into the international stage. Yeah, and just look, like I said, getting to know the lads was probably the main thing for me, so I can know what they're doing on the pitch, but at the same time, the off-the-field relationships are massive, and they're probably what helps the team be stronger.
And finally then for me, in your early Munster days, you just about would have crossed paths with Rassie. What was he like to work under as a youngster coming through the ranks?
Yeah, he gave me my debut, but other than that, like, I didn't really have much dealings with him. But I suppose I tried to learn as much as I could off of Rassie and Jacques when he was there. And yeah, look, they're two absolute masterminds of rugby as well, and yeah, great coaches.
John?
Calvin,
little bit tricky at altitude, playing as a wing. You have to kind of reposition yourself a little bit and go against your instincts. How have you found that in the past, and how much does it play into your mindset as things end of the game?
There's no real effect on mindset. Like, you know, rugby is still rugby, I suppose, at the end of the day. Yeah, look, you have to be a bit more worried about kicks going a bit further, I suppose, but it's just a heightened awareness around that. Other than that, you're seeing similar pictures, so it doesn't really change too much. And you know, at the end of the day, both teams have to play in altitude. So yeah, whoever deals with it the best, hopefully, will win, I suppose.
How much footage do you watch of your direct opponents without watching too much?
Yeah, I suppose some of them would be in the URC as well, so it makes it a bit easier to find some footage for them. Yeah, you just be all over kind of their traits and what threats they have as well. But other than that, yeah, we try to focus on ourselves. You know, conscious of the threats and the strengths that they have. But other than that, just focus on ourselves and our own connections.
Well, the way England used the kick return for that try, I know you probably don't remember it. But like the way they kind of threw something different at you that day, has that kind of changed anything in the way you guys are doing things at all?
Yeah, actually after that game we did look at the way we exit and the way we chase our kicks. So I feel like we've rectified that after the English game. You know, we were probably caught too easy in that game. And yeah, I remember it now because I obviously watched it back. But yeah.
Munster season, obviously, everyone was disappointed. You must be doubly disappointed the fact that you weren't able to get out there. Was it just something that happened in the week? Or?
It was actually the last 10 minutes in the Ospreys game. My calf started getting real tight and felt like it was going to tear. But stupidly, I didn't come off. And yeah, then later on in the week, I wasn't able to run on it. I was in a good bit of pain, so I had to pull out for the Glasgow game, unfortunately. And yeah, it was a tough watch, to be honest. You know, all the lads were devastated, and so were the fans, I suppose. We felt like we didn't really account well for ourselves on the day, but that's the way it goes, and fair play to Glasgow going on to win it.
How are the coaches and leaders kind of framing this as a kind of a challenge of what an achievement it would be to pull it off?
Yeah, look, it's obviously a massive challenge coming down here to South Africa. It's hard enough to win a game in the URC down here, so I can imagine what an international test is going to be like. But yeah, the coaches obviously have told us how much of a massive challenge it is, and I think Paulie was saying to us that only one Irish team has actually won down here internationally. So, you know, that's another massive challenge and something that we have to get over ourselves and hopefully come up with positive results.
Anime?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Any other questions?
Are you doing committee stuff around like that? Are you the other tour stuff?
I'm on news from home on the bus, so yeah, I'm doing my best news reporter impression up at the top of the bus. I'm not much crack with it, but I'm working on it. Like.
Hello everybody and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports. And Ireland have named their 23 to face the Springboks this weekend. Loftus Versfeld, 5 o'clock. Put in your diaries. You don't want to miss it. It is going to be the game of the year. And only probably going to be topped by potentially next weekend's game down in Durban. But it is the grudge match. The hype train is firmly left the station, and yeah, listen, it doesn't get much bigger than this. We've got Springboks releasing hype videos, we've got shots being taken in the media, we've got statisticians putting up all the various different stats about the different teams, and we now finally know exactly which of the players in the Irish squad will be facing the Springboks this weekend. Before we look at that, please do smash like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. Let's have a look, shall we? And it's a pretty expected team. And one thing about Andy Farrell is he doesn't really deviate, to be honest. He knows the strongest 23. He knows what his strengths are, and he's backed that. You know, it's a 5-3 split, for example. He's not going to be pulled into, you know, naming a 6-2 split to try and rival Springboks' physicality. Ireland, and Paul O'Connell spoke about this in his press conference earlier this week rather. They're focusing on themselves. He said this is the nice thing about this current Irish setup, is that they focus more on themselves than it is on other teams, for example, and the likes. And I really like that, I think, as well. I think, you know, you've got one of the best sides in the world, top 2-3 best sides in the world. Don't change, for other teams. Yes, adapt where you can, but don't reinvent the wheel. Let's look at the side, shall we? So in the front row, it is Andrew Porter, Dan Sheehan, and Tyke Furlong, as expected. In the second row, it is Joe McCarthy and Tyke Byrne. What a tight five that is. Scrum battle is going to be absolutely immense. Frans Malherbe versus Andrew Porter. Rachel Badiswe and Chair versus Tyke Furlong. And then Mongi Manambi going up against Dan Sheehan is also going to be a really cool matchup. I mean, Joe McCarthy, for me, one of the best players, most improved players in the Six Nations in terms of a breakout tournament for him. Tyke Byrne, I still rate him as probably the best utility forward in the world in terms of can play and lock and flank and be, affect the game. He's great at the breakdown as well. For a lock who can run the line out, can play on the flank and be good at the breakdown. He's a very impressive player. And then a back row of Peter Omani, who will captain the side. Caden Doris and Josh van der Vlier, former World Player of the Year. All the jokes about him being from South Africa, while he'll be in front of a Loftus crowd this weekend. Interesting to see how he does cope. As expected, Craig Casey does start ahead of Conor Murray. He is the closest thing they have to a Jamison Gibson Park with regards to his speed at the breakdown and very attacking orientated scrum half. However, he's not Jamison Gibson Park, and that's going to be a massive loss for Ireland. And I say it with great respect to Craig Casey. I'm a massive Craig Casey fan. Jamison Gibson Park, for me, if you had to sit there, put in a World Player of the Year nomination list of what we've seen so far this year, Gibson Park will be very close to the top of mine, to be perfectly honest. Drac Cowley starts at 10. The centres are Bundy Aki and Robbie Henshaw, and you've then got a back three of James Lowe, Calvin Nash, who has got a press conference on the channel as well, speaking about his time in Ireland setup. And then on debut, Jamie Osborne gets an opportunity. Very exciting player. Obviously, Hugo Keenan as he continues to prepare for the Olympics. So Osborne does get an opportunity. Off the bench, it will be Ronnie Kelleher, Cian Healy and Finlay Beelin. Plenty of experience. I mean, Cian Healy is a centurion. But also maybe sometimes people have talked about the fact that maybe that's a bit of a lack of loose head depth in the fact that they have to keep bringing Cian Healy. Andrew Porter often plays 65, 70 minutes, to be perfectly honest. You then got James Ryan and Ryan Baird. Very nice players there. James Ryan, I think, he's got a bit of a point to prove. I think, Joe McCarthy's kind of like sort of leapfrogged him. And I think that he wants to try and sort of bring on an impact. I've been very impressed by Baird and the growth of him. Then you've got the experience of Conor Murray, also international centurion, knows how to close off a game. You then got Kieran Fowley and Gary Ringrose, who is an absolute... I love watching Gary Ringrose play as rugby. He's so much fun to watch. So as expected, a big Leinster feel obviously in terms of the clubs, but it's a good side. We're going to do a bit of a video on sort of exactly, and you can actually check the team profile, by the way, also on the channel in terms of seeing the individual heights, weights and stuff like that. But I actually, funny enough, if you look at it as a collective, I think they're actually taller and heavier than, on average, than the Springboks squad. So all this talk about, the Springboks physicality and the Springboks being so big, this is a big Irish size. And we even saw it from Frans Malherbe during Chasing the Sun, saying, listen, these guys are also big. So that physical battle is going to be absolutely immense. The scrum battle, for example, set piece battle in general is going to be huge. So absolutely can't wait for this one. We're obviously going to have a bit more of an in-depth look at some of the matchups when we do our official preview, which will be out tomorrow. Until then, smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steve, and I'll chat to you soon.
Hi Andy, I'll get straight into it. Jamie Osborne debut on Saturday. Can you talk to us specifically around what is it you see from him as a full back? Because we haven't seen him play a lot of full back since his under 20 days.
Yeah, well, first of all, congratulations to Jamie and his family. It's as always, it's a privilege for us to be able to name somebody in the starting line for the debut, especially with an occasion like this. So congratulations to Jamie, and we'll celebrate that tonight with him, and hopefully we'll do him proud on Saturday as well. But as far as Jamie as a as a player is concerned, never mind a fullback. This has been in the pipeline for quite some time now in regards to Jamie's been
in and out of the squad, obviously as a development player, but also he's been picked in squads before and been unfortunate to be injured. Hence, in the Rugby World Cup training squad, he got injured pretty early, and we was gutted for him there. But when Jamie's been into the squad on numerous occasions, he's always filled in for us in all sorts of different positions. Certainly at fullback, as well as centre, etc. But anyone who knows Jamie as a rugby player and his background as a junior coming through, a lot of it's been in the 15 jersey. But it's just his skill set that is very interesting for us to see how we use the skill set that he's got. He's obviously gonna add to our performance, because what I've seen certainly lately to the back end of the URC season is that whenever he plays, he's got presence. It doesn't matter what position he plays. He suits the way that we play. He's bright. He gets himself on the ball a lot in an organising way. He's very good. His communication's good and it's accurate. He's obviously got nice soft hands and can play that way, but also he can hit a line as well. To add to that, he's deceptively very quick, good in the air, very athletic, and he's got a big left boot on him as well. So, is that enough for you?
And then just on Craig Casey, he's going to be earning his 15th cap, but this feels like by far the biggest test he's had over those 15 years.
Of course, and I'm sure Greg will feel like that as well. He'll see this as his big opportunity. He deserves it. He deserves the challenge to start a test match like this, and we're looking forward to see how he drives the team forward.
Next question.
Just on Jamie and Jamie, is there any value things that the back in red recent game of is it scoring?
Well, anytime that you pick any side, there's always a risk, but you've got to go with what you think is going to be best for the team. And his skill set is undoubtedly the right fit for us. With Hugo, obviously being out of the squad, it's a slot where we can have a look at Jamie and how he adds value to that is something that we've been excited about for some time now, and we get the opportunity to do that. No, and you know what? I always say this, don't I, about Stu McCluskey. I mean, his form's been great. He's been great in training. You look back at some of the big games that we have won, and he's been involved in a lot of them, and he's not even in the 23. Obviously Gary's a class player that's there waiting to come on to add to the team. So it's as tough as it gets, and it's exactly where you want it to be.
Any other questions from the live section?
How are you looking at this test series?
Like that.
There's you've obviously had to, if you look back at the team you have this weekend, there's a lot of changes to the side you would have had against South Africa at the World Cup. So there's a mix there of very experienced players, but also guys getting an early opportunity against the world champions.
But that's what happens in all sides all the time. People get injured, people retire, new kids on the block always come through. Some people are always in form, some people not so much. So that's the game, isn't it? Look at all of our squads over the last while. There's always something. In fact, I look back on some of the games and realise I look back on to try and think about what happened within that game, say 4 or 5 years ago, and sometimes I can't remember who played, but it's always mixing and matching. I think that's been the strength of the Irish squad over the last number of years.
And then just also as well, you're not training at Loftus tomorrow. Normally, we would always see you training at the ground before the game. Is there a particular reason you're just staying at the training base tomorrow?
Yeah, I suppose the players, a lot of them have been there and done that. We're obviously made the conscious decision to stay here in Joburg, and it's been great for us. We got here nice and early. The training facilities are great. We're not travelling down to stay in a hotel, so that there's less moving around. There's been a bit of that towards the end of the season, so it just keeps us a little bit more relaxed, that's all.
At what point did you, obviously Hugo wasn't coming from a long way out, so at what point did you identify Jamie as the manager?
Yeah, bracketed with a few others, so open-minded enough to see how it goes, and with the extra couple of days that we've had training and prepping wise, it just confirms things a little bit more. So you go with what you're seeing and what your gut's telling you.
With Hugo, how involved were you with Hugo's decision?
I spoke to Hugo quite a bit. There's no way that if somebody's got a dream like that, now don't get me wrong, if 10 of them had a dream, there's a different decision to be had there, but when he was highlighted from the Sevens management that he was in there thinking, then the question goes to Hugo, if that was a dream of his to do that, there's no way that I would stand in his way.
Did Jamie say anything, or did you actually say to him you were playing fullback this weekend directly to him, and if so, what did he say?
Well, we slotted him in, I think 10 days ago now. You were in at 15, how's it going, Jamie? Yeah, great, I'm all across it, no problem. And he's a quiet lad, and he comes across as quite shy, but he's not. He's confident in his own ability. You can tell with how he prepares, how he plays the game, etc. And he's all across his stuff within a few days, and he's very comfortable.
Why do you think that South Africa does so well in World Cups and manages to get over the line all the time? And do you expect a lot of change from South Africa since you last played them?
No, they're very good at knockout rugby, and I think they've proven that over the last two World Cups, especially the last one, by grinding out wins by one scores, and it's a credit to them. They stick to their plan really well, and they're a well drilled team in terms of what they're trying to get out of the game, and to expect something different, of course. We've got new coaches gone in there, and even just from the game against Wales, they're certainly trying to play a bit more expansive, and they're trying to play a bit more than they probably were a year ago, for sure.
And Ireland have never won a series in South Africa, and given the change in schedules, this could be the last chance to do so. Is that history important?
Yeah, we've touched on that in the camp for sure. This Irish team has been part of a lot of history over the last couple of years, and we have said if we can come away here with 2 wins, we've made history in terms of being the first team to come here and win a series. So it's no different to the goal of any team that's ever been here for a series, but it's definitely motivation for sure.
Roland? You played more minutes, I think, than anyone else in the squad this season. Yeah, certainly from the World Cup squad, I think you've done the most. How's the body holding up? Do you feel like that's battle hardened you, kind of as you're ready to go?
Yeah, I think at moments during the season I definitely felt it, but I think I've had, after the final, there's been a couple of weekends off now where I haven't played, so you come into a new environment, it freshens you up for sure, and you're very well looked after here as well in terms of whether it's food or we have masseuses here all the time, so it's a bit easier to look after your body than it is when you're back in the club. Not that you don't have those things as well, but it's right in front of your face here for sure. So I'm definitely feeling good at the moment. Yeah. To answer your question.
Can you give us a sense of what it's like to play? What's different about playing the Springboks that's different to playing the other teams that you play? Where do they test you? The other teams maybe don't, and what they beyond?
I think the most obvious one is their physicality.
you know, they've got a really big front, they've got a big pack in general, and they do look to somewhat bully you. They go after a lot of rucks in terms of whether it's poaching or trying to bully those rucks and get the ball back, and they just make it scrappy. They want to make the game scrappy and get into an arm wrestle. Some teams don't want that we do play, and they want to just play ball and run it around you. And I think now South Africa are looking to, you know, hit it up and bully us up front, and then probably try get out wide on us. So that's going to be a challenge for us, and you know, we're looking forward to it.
I just asked finally about Jack. Like obviously Johnny retired, and everyone outside was worrying about what might happen, but the way he stepped up, I know you work with him closely at Munster, watching Access Munster, he seems to speak a lot, he's very impressive. Like, how has he surprised you at all in the way that he's built that boy and stepped up? And
not particularly. I think, you know, when Johnny was there and he wasn't playing, you know, what people wouldn't have seen is his willingness to learn and his willingness to, you know, to soak up all the information he could from those around him, and you know, you could see that transition into his game, and you know, game on game he's getting better and better, and you know, his game management, everything has improved immensely just even over the last 9-10 months. His game is certainly just continued on an upward trajectory.
Are previous matches between the countries relevant come the opening whistle Saturday? Do you just say what's done is done? You look at it when you're prepping for a game, but after that,
yeah, of course you can't live in the past, can you? You know, each test offers new challenges for sure. You got to take your learnings and from the previous tests where you've won or lost. There's always something to learn from every game, and teams are going to try out different things because of the last games, you know, because of pictures they've seen in the previous games. But yeah, once that whistle goes, it's, you know, I'll focus on that one game.
Did you see anything from the Wales game that gave you a few ideas about what you might do?
We just saw more of, like, they're playing more, probably a bit more expansive rugby was the main thing that we took from it. Yeah, I'm sure the coaches have come up with certain plans around things and what we want to do in this game, and whether that's from the Wales game or previous games, I'm not sure.
The Springboks now have new coaches in their management team. One of them know the Irish very well, Jerry Flannery. What do you expect from them? First of all, are you expecting a different kind of game plan from the Springboks having those new coaches there?
Yeah, just look, it's like I said earlier, it does seem like they're playing a bit more expansive. Defensively, I wouldn't say they've changed too much. I think, you know, Fla worked under Jacques, so I think he's bringing in pretty much a very similar kind of defence system than that he saw him use in Munster and for the Springbok, obviously. So I can't imagine too much change there, but definitely attack-wise, you could see straight away against Wales that they were a bit more expansive for sure.
Your team hasn't played together since the Six Nations. Do you feel that you are ready to come together as a team? It's a very big test match ahead.
Yeah, of course. I think what's brilliant about this squad is how, you know, we're playing with the best in Ireland, and everyone's able to just flick that switch, and we're well used to the system in here at this stage under Faz, and I think everyone gets on the same page very quickly, and hopefully that'll be evident now come Saturday.
Glasgow Warriors coach Franco Smith said Loftus is the best stadium in the world. There's hardly any wind and the ball flies. Is that something you guys have noticed and would take note of?
Yeah, the ball definitely goes further, that's for sure. The best stadium in the world, I suppose I'll be able to answer that after Saturday in a full state, after seeing it, you know, fully packed out, and probably think it's a much better stadium if we win as well.
Thank you very much.
There's another one, please. Young goal, on the road, trade box. Yeah. Oh.
Everyone's sitting down, facing that way. This is the race. Ball's got to go from cone all the way through. Run it back to Damien, against the ball, and you go to your knees. You've got to go all the way down, all the way back, when you get to the ball, you go to your feet. Okay, and the winner is the one that gets back here. So down back 3 times, sitting, knees, feet. Hold on, touch the cone. Maybe one practice round, okay, ready?
Guys, thumbs up there.
Alright, 1 minute, guys.
and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports for today's World Rankings preview. And we did this a couple of weeks ago when there were a couple of games on, but now it's really back to the battle for #1 spot and the likes on the World Rugby Rankings, because we officially have Test match rugby in across the board. We have got Samoa versus Italy, Fiji versus Georgia. We have got USA versus Romania. We've got New Zealand versus England, Wales versus Australia, South Africa versus Ireland, Canada, Scotland, as well as Argentina versus France. So as a result, lots of places and potential points up for grabs for the various teams, with Ireland potentially going back to the top of that World Rankings table with a big win over the Springboks. Let's get into it, shall we? And before we do, smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel as well. So, the battle for #1, which some people don't really care about. If you do, let me know in the comments if you do or don't. I mean, I don't think it's the be-all and end-all, for example, but I don't think it's a bad barometer. I think they're generally more or less correct in terms of the top 2-3 sides. I mean, it's not a trophy, for example. Maybe if they added a trophy, there would be a more incentive towards it, for example. A bit of a leeway that they're kind of looking at. But let's go into what the permutations are for the weekend, shall we? As mentioned, Ireland will return to the top of the rankings should they beat South Africa, the current #1s, by more than 15 points. Obviously, if you guys know how the system works, it factors in, first of all, a win, loss, draw, then a margin of victory, less than 15, more than 15, and then home or away. That does come into it. So obviously, Ireland beating South Africa gives them points. Beating them by more than 15 gives them more points. And away gives them even more points. That is why they can climb that high. They were the world #1. Lost it last year when South Africa beat New Zealand in the World Cup, and when they lost to New Zealand, they sort of dropped out. A smaller margin of victory would see them close the gap, but not go to #1. They would get close to within 0.49 rating points ahead of their second game next week, which means a loss next week would probably then put the Boks below Ireland. A smaller margin of victory would and the Springboks could extend their advantage over Ireland to 4.79 points if they are victorious by more than 15 points. A win of this magnitude would take their rating above 95 points, following a gain of 0.47 points. I mean, that's mental if they were to do that. A smaller margin of victory would result in South Africa holding a 4.49 point advantage. Whatever happens to Loftus, South Africa and Ireland will still occupy the 2 top spots. They cannot drop lower than 1-2. So there'll still be a battle for 1-2 next weekend. France and England can both replace New Zealand in 3rd place this weekend if they win and the scorelines are weighted in their favour. The All Blacks can drop down to 5th, which is their lowest ever ranking, if they are beaten by England by more than 15 points and France draw or win the first test against Los Pumas. A smaller win for England will still see them climb a place to 4th if France fail to beat Argentina. The All Blacks cannot improve on 3rd place this weekend, and the same applies to Scotland in 6th, as they cannot improve their rating due to the 21.92 difference between themselves and Canada before home weighting is even factored in. Victoria Scotland are safe in 6th unless Argentina beat France by more than 15 points, in which case Los Pumas will replace them in 6th place. 2 places is the most that Wales can climb with a win over Australia, although it will depend on the margin and the outcome of Italy's match against Samoa. Any loss, if tandem with Fiji avoiding defeat in Georgia, will see Australia drop out of the top 10 for the first time since the rankings were introduced in 2003. So it could be an absolute nightmare weekend for Australia if things were to really go back. If Georgia win, Australia cannot fall lower than 10th, even with a heavy defeat. But if they beat Fiji by more than 15 points, the gap between them and Australia could be just 0.7 rating points. So Georgia could very much be coming for Australia, which would be interesting. A win for Fiji against Georgia and a defeat for Wales would see the 2 teams swap places, with the Pacific Islands moving into the top 10 and Wales dropping to an all-time low of 11th. A 2-place climb to a record equaling 11th place is possible for Georgia if they beat Fiji by more than 15 points. Elsewhere, wins for Romania against the USA and Chile against Hong Kong would lead to both teams climbing the rankings as well. that is what is at stake this weekend. Just very quickly, if you wanted to know, because they do confirm the match officials over here, Samoa and Italy will be officiated by Paul Williams. Craig Evans will take charge of a referee, also a referee Fiji versus Georgia. Angus maybe will take on his test debut with USA versus Romania on Friday. Nika Amashakili from Georgia will referee New Zealand versus England. Really, really do rate him. Pierre Bosset from France will take charge of Australia versus Wales. Luke Pearce will be the man in charge of South Africa versus Ireland. It'll be the first time he officiated these two teams in the clash. It'll be a second time refereeing at Loftus. He last refereed there in a warm-up match back in 2019 against Argentina. Chris Busby will referee Argentina and France for the first time. And Adam Leal from England will take charge of Canada and Scotland. Where do we see the various people landing up on the world rankings? Let me know down in the comments below. Smash a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steve, and I'll chat to you soon. Hello everybody and welcome to the Stevie P channel for the first episode of the Stevie P show, featuring me, Stevie P, and what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be doing a bit of a reflection, a bit of a dive into the tenure of Rassie Erasmus. As mentioned, this is a relaunch of the channel which will feature weekly episodes of the Stevie P show, some which will just be me going on a bit of a rant or talking about something that's on my mind, and sometimes we'll have guests. We're going to be almost doing sort of some podcast style sort of videos as well, doing sort of long-term or sort of long deep dives really into sort of topics, stuff like that. And they're going to vary from sort of sporting stuff to, you know, other sort of aspects of life, and really excited for the journey. So if you're new, smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel as well. Let me know any suggestions for more content on the channel in the comments as well. Obviously, we will have a weekly episode of the Stevie P show, but we're going to be doing a lot of other different things. Looking to do a vlog next week of basically a week on tour, in inverted commas, you know, following the box around Durban and Ireland. So potentially we'll be doing that next week, so keep an eye out for that as well. Episode 1. We had to do a rugby episode, didn't we? First of all, obviously everybody knows me from the rugby world, and the rugby fraternity is up and about, and you know, doing circles really, striding around their offices, because we all want to see what's going to happen this weekend. It is Springboks versus Ireland, the game we've all been waiting for since the end of the World Cup, and the hype couldn't be higher. Really, we're talking about a game which traditionally has not been a massive rivalry between, you know, Springboks and Ireland, but has become one in the last sort of 10 years. We're talking about a Springboks side which haven't beaten Ireland in about 6 years. You know, we're talking about an Irish side who have been number one in the world consistently since the last World Cup, and yet sort of fell over the first hurdle really when it came to the Rugby World Cup. And this is sort of kind of being built, the game to determine who is the real number one in the world. A lot of South African fans saying, you know, we are already the number ones, and the Irish fans, you know, saying that, you know, consistently they've been. But I want to look a bit bigger than that, because I am looking at Rassie Erasmus and the next sort of World Cup cycle, and I'm almost sort of laying down a bit of a challenge. The one thing that Rassie Erasmus has yet to be able to do, the one thing he maybe still has to prove as a coach, and it's an incredible statement to say he still has something to prove. We're talking about someone who has coached the Boks to a World Cup title as the head coach, as well as then director of rugby, a British and Irish Lions series as well. Since he took over in 2018, it's been a really, really good road for the Boks, but it's been an up and down road as well. And that is what we're going to talk about a bit today. So let's load back, shall we? 2018, Rassie Erasmus takes over a struggling Springboks side, record losses, 57-0 against New Zealand, big losses against Ireland, losing to Italy, and the Boks in absolutely disarray. You know, crowds of people calling for the sack of Alistair Coetzee, people saying they're no longer supporting the Springboks, and SA Rugby was probably in the worst space it's ever been. The solution of that is to bring Mr. Rassie Erasmus back from Ireland with his friend Jacques Nienaber, and they take over the Springboks. 18 months later, we are celebrating World Cup champions after they took over. So it's been an instant success. And after that, we then had a very interesting 4 years. We had COVID in 2020, which removed, we literally did not play a single test in 2020, which basically removed about 12 tests from sort of the World Cup cycle that we usually would have had. After that, the year after that, we then had the British and Irish Lions series, which did take place, albeit behind closed doors, you know, in empty stadiums down in Cape Town. So not a ideal situation at all. But it was also a situation where after having lost a full year of rugby, the Boks had no time to try and bring anybody new in, for example. There were a couple of players that were involved in the World Cup, but generally very much almost sort of the exact same squad. They got over the line. Matchday writing himself into history once again with that kick in 2021, all those years after he put the British and Irish Lions to bed back in 2009. And that was it. Boom. British and Irish Lions series secured. We were then talking about 1 year, 2022, 1 year where we had to basically prepare and become a World Cup challenging team, you know, a side that could go to France and be competitive. And as a result, we did not see, we did see some rotation. We did see new faces. Let's not pretend we didn't. The game that we lost in Bloemfontein had a lot of new faces. Somebody like an Evan Ruiz getting a debut at the time. A Ruan Nokia getting a debut at the time. Albert Lowe, for example. Kirkley Orense being called into the squad in around there. So there were definitely players who obviously were brought in. Generally, though, it was still the bulk of the squad from 2019. And that sort of continued into 2023, where we took a squad to France, which was a bit of an aging squad, but hell, so much experience, which showed in the fact that come the World Cup final, we named the most experienced Springbok side of all time, got over the line and won the World Cup. So what is it that I would like to Rassie Erasmus to do, and what I'd like to see? During the tenure, 2018 to 2024, 1 Rugby Championship, 2 World Cups, 1 British and Irish Lions series. It is a very good time. I would like to see more. And this is me being greedy, 100%. This is me being greedy. I can understand why over the last sort of 4 to 6 years, it was instant, plans, short-term success, short-term planning, and it worked. It's actually incredible. The more you look at how much the odds were stacked against South African Rugby at the time, both World Cup wins, so incredible for different reasons. Now, I think we're looking at a time where SA Rugby has never been in a better position. We have never been stronger in terms of the depth we have in our team and the structures, the quality of coaching staff, for example, the quality of players. And as a result, I would like to see consistency. That is my plea. That is my challenge to the Springbok staff for the next 4 years. I want to see more trophies. If we look at Rassie Erasmus' stats, for example, during his time as head coach, he had 27 games where he won 18, lost 8, and drew 1. That 16-16 draw over in New Zealand back in 2019. His win percentage was 66.6%. I think it makes him about the 4th or 5th most successful Springbok coach. If we look at it and then sort of including the Jacques Nienaber era, where Rassie Erasmus was director of rugby, not officially head coach, as a result, sort of the stats more sort of lean towards are attributed to Jacques Nienaber, and so they should be. I've got no issue about that. I always said that I don't think we ever gave him enough credit as the head coach. But Rassie Erasmus was still involved. It was still at the World Cup, calling a lot of the shots and very much sort of overseeing exactly what was happening. So if we look at the Rassie and Jacques Nienaber era, that sort of win percentage does go up slightly to a sort of 68%, but still very similar in terms of the number of games that we were sort of winning, losing. There wasn't a drawn game during that era. And for me, that is something I'd like to see improve. We've got to consistently win test matches, more consistently than we have, because there's no reason why we can't. And, I think we need to move away from this whole, we only care about the World Cups, because we're better than that. We've got the talent, we've got the players, we've got the resources now to contend in between World Cups. There's no British and Irish Lions series to prepare for next year. This, for me, should be, the golden era of Springbok rugby. And what does that mean? It means Rugby Championship trophies. We've won 1 during this sort of era. Why can't we win 2 or 3 in the next few years? I want this year, 2024, we should be looking to win the Rugby Championship. We've got 2 away games in Australia. We've got New Zealand twice at home, which doesn't get sort of any more favourable for us. 1 game in Argentina away, 1 game against Argentina at home. We don't really... Argentina are tough away, but we generally do win. Australia have actually been the most difficult team that we've really had to beat away, so that's a big test for us. But I look at that Australia side, for example, we shouldn't be losing to it at the end of the day. I think Joe Schmidt's going to turn them into a very impressive side, but he's going to be going into about his 4th or 5th test by the time we play against them. New Zealand, under Scott Robertson, obviously we don't know what to expect, but we expect a lot of improvement. We're expecting them to be very competitive. We're talking about a team that came, runners-up during the World Cup. We should be able to beat them. So I want to see in the next 4 years us winning. It sounds silly, but the Freedom Trophy, the trophy that we've got when we play against New Zealand. I would like to see us go and get that trophy back. Maybe it sounds like a small, insignificant thing, but it's about beating the All Blacks twice. We need to go and do that. We haven't done that. If we look at the All Blacks results during the Rassie Erasmus era, by the way, 11 played, 5 won, 5 lost, 1 draw. So it is a 45% win rate we've currently got against the All Blacks during the Rassie Erasmus era. That, for me, can get higher. I think we can generally take on the All Blacks and beat them twice this year, for example. Win the Rugby Championship. On the outgoing tours, I don't see why we can't have, invincible tours where we go and we're unbeaten. This Ireland series, for example, go and win 2-0. I genuinely believe that we've got the coaching IP, we've got the rugby players, we've got the talent to do these things. And for me, that is the next frontier for Rassie Erasmus. The three-peat, if he achieves it, will be unmatched. I don't think anybody would ever be able to do it again, to be perfectly honest. Am I confident we can do it? Not amazingly, not so much in terms of, I don't think we've got the players to it. I just think, 3 in a row is it's something that's never been done. And it's going to be incredibly difficult to try and do. If it does happen, then incredible. But I don't see why we can't pick up more trophies along the way. And I want to look back at this 2018 to 2027, that 10-year period where you can go and say 2 World Cups, British and Irish Lions Series, 3 or 4 rugby championships, a couple of Freedom Cups, for example, a couple of other small trophies we've got with some of the other nations. This, for me, should become the most dominant era of Springbok rugby. I don't see why it can't be. So that's not a criticism towards Rassie Erasmus, but I think, and the nice thing is they've been talking about as well, that they want to have that consistency. They want to have these results throughout this 4 years and not be so sort of always in a rebuilding phase. We are rebuilding, but we're rebuilding while we're at the top. We're not having to reset. We're bringing players along the journey. We're going to bring them up towards the World Cup, and hopefully we can go for 3 in a row. Too harsh? Fair? What do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. Smash a like on the video. Once again, any suggestions, put them in the comments below. But that is this for this week on this TVP show. I'll be back next week, and make sure you enjoy the channel, and we'll see you soon. Hello and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports. For today's match preview, Springboks versus Ireland, the big clash. The #1 spot in the world is up for grabs potentially, although the Ireland will have to beat the Boks by 15 points if they were to take that #1 spot back. So it is really the #1 spot that is the Springboks to lose, but it's not really about the world rankings, isn't it? It's about pride. It's about going and proving your worth on Saturday or tomorrow, and really, really looking forward to exactly what this clash is going to offer, because we are talking about probably the 2 best teams in the world. New Zealand probably not a distant third, but I do think the Springboks are the best team in the world from the World Cup in terms of, especially when it comes to knockout games and stuff like that. And I think Ireland have been consistently the best team in the world over the last 4-year period. So, we are talking about 2 giants at the moment in the peak of their powers as well. You look at the Caps, for example, you look at the teams, they're established, they're experienced players, the coaches are pretty experienced, teams that are very settled, very close, if not at their best, going toe-to-toe. It's going to be an absolutely epic encounter. Before we look at the team and look at some of the matchups, please do smash the like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. We'll start with the South African side. It is one of the most experienced 15s we've ever named, the second most, actually. And let's look at that experience, shall we? In the front row, Rassie Erasmus or Oxenchair packs down next to Bongi Minambi and Frans Malherbe, forming a really good tight 5 with Franco Moss and Eben Etzebeth in behind them. Great front row, great second row, lots and lots of caps. I think the average caps in that tight 5 is like 80. It's ridiculous. A lot of that coming from, obviously, Eben Etzebeth, who's got over 100, but Franco Mossad, very experienced, Frans Malherbe, Bongi Minambi, very experienced, and Oxenchair, always not as experienced, sitting with about 30-35 caps, so plenty of experience there. As is in that back row, Siya Kolisi back to captain the side, Peter Steph Latoy next to him, Kwagga Smith getting the nod, and we'll talk a little bit about him in just a bit. Faf de Klerk will partner Andre Pollard in the 9-10 combination. Chesney Colby, Kirtley Aronsad, Billy Leroux, your back 3, as really expected, Damien Delendi, JC Creel, will equal the record set by, or held by, Jean de Villiers and Jacques Fourie for the most capped centre pairing in Springbok history. Off the bench, we will see Malcolm Marx, Gerard Stennekamp and Vincent Koch as the reserve front row. Salman Murat, Arcus Neyman, 2 locks in the bomb squad, and they'll be complemented by Marco van Staden, Grant Williams and Sasha Feinberg and Ngoma-Zulu, the 2 backline replacements there. Both versatile players. Sasha Feinberg and Ngoma-Zulu covers 10, 12, 15. Grant Williams covers 9, 11, 14. Do the maths, they cover everything between those 2 players. Let's look at Ireland, shall we? It's a very settled Ireland side. Andy Farrell has made 1 or 2 changes to what Rassie Erasmus predicted, but generally is a very similar team to kind of what we sort of expected to see. It is the pack that we saw during the Six Nations, and if it's not broken, why fix it? So Andrew Porter, Dan Sheehan, and Tyke Furlong will start. I think we're going to have an epic scrum battle. I'm really keen to see how that goes. They'll be backed up by Joey McCarthy, who was standout in the Six Nations. Ty Byrne, who for me is one of the best utility players in the world. Peter O'Mahony will captain the side. He's got Josh Beneflea, former World Player of the Year, next to him. Both number 7s tomorrow, former World Players of the Year. Kenan Jarvis will start at number 8. Craig Casey gets the nod. No Jamison Gibson Park, as we know, on the tour, which is going to be a massive, massive loss for Ireland. So Craig Casey gets an opportunity. Very nippy scrum half, but not quite the same type of player as Jamison Gibson Park. He will partner Jack Crowley as expected. The back three is James Lowe, Calvin Nash, and Jamie Osborne. This potentially an area where the Boks can try and target some. Right, and we are live. Hello and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports. Apologies for the delay, bit of technical issues here on a Tuesday morning, but we are live. We do have a Springboks squad, and it's a very interesting squad, which is already causing a lot of debate, and very interested to see what the reaction is going to be, because a lot of people are quite upset, a lot of people are questioning certain decisions. I don't think it's that surprising of a Springbok squad. I think that most of the decisions make sense. There are a couple of players who are very unlucky, but they always are, aren't they? You know, there always are big decisions to make, and you can't have a 50, 60-man squad, so you have to make the big calls. And I think that is what the squad looks like. I think it is a squad which it just shows you how big the depth is in South Africa. It shows you how many good players there are. You look at some of the players on the standby list, for example, and you think, how can they not be in the Springbok squad? But you also then look at the squad and you think, well, who are they going to replace? And that becomes the problem, isn't it? So it's an interesting one. And very interesting to see everybody's thoughts. So first things first, I'm going to put a poll in the comments saying, do you like the Springbok squad? Yes or no? Simple yes or no. And if you don't, let me know some of the players that you think have been snubbed, for example, and who might be in the squad and who you think they should replace. That's also the important thing for me to make, is that don't just say Albert Lowe has to be in the squad. Ahead of who? Because that's the problem, isn't it? Because I know that he's going to be one that a lot of people are going to talk about. So let's go through it, shall we? And what we're going to do is we're going to go through the different parts of the squad, the forwards, the backs, and then we're going to look at the standby list, which is for an interesting one as well, which is mainly based on the players who were in the original squad that don't make the sort of final squad. Nobody's really been dropped completely out of the entire sort of the mix. So that is probably the important part over there. Right, shall we start with the forwards? Let's have a look, shall we? This is the forwards that have been named, 22 that have been named. The big surprise there for me is Jan Hendrik Wessels. Gerard Steenekamp, somebody I didn't really mention much in the uploaded video, which has gone up already. But he's also been called up, as has Jan Kobela. So in that sort of forward pack there, the only uncapped player is, I think it's Pepsi Buthelezi is uncapped, and Jan Hendrik Wessels is uncapped. There are 4 uncapped players in the squad, by the way. Morne van den Berg and... who's the other one? Morne van den Berg and there's another forward, actually. There are four uncapped players in the squad. In fact, actually, it could be another. Jan Kobela is capped, I'm pretty sure. Trying to be back. The reason I say that is because they're busy having an argument on the Springbok WhatsApp group as to who the uncapped players are. It's Jan Hendrik Wessels. I'm pretty sure Jan Kobela's got a cap. Morne van den Berg doesn't have a cap. Pepsi Buthelezi doesn't have a cap. Okay, well, we'll get to it anyway. For example, Jan Kobela doesn't have a cap, by the way. Oh, yeah, he got injured. He was in the squad and then he didn't get to have a cap. So let's have a look at the squad, shall we? Pepsi Buthelezi, I think that's quite a surprise inclusion. I think that very much covering number 6 rather than number 8, or there is an option at 8. But I think it's the fact that he can cover 6 as well, which really puts him into that squad ahead of somebody like an Albert Lowe, for example. if we look at the rest of the squad, it's pretty straightforward. I'm very glad to see Thomas Toy in there. A lot of people complaining about Volko Low. Thomas Toy playing, I think, loose head and tight head does set him apart. And he's had a sensational season. He was one of the best players in the Premiership. And it's a great reward for him because he missed out on the World Cup. And I think that you would talk about players who've been around that box squad for a long time, never really always had his chance. And I think he made the brave decision to leave the Sharks, to leave his comfort zone, go to the Premiership, which sometimes can mean really sacrificing your international aspirations because a lot of the squad often gets picked from South Africa, and obviously the lineman camps, for example, all in South Africa. And for players who are on the fringes, for example, they risk potentially falling out of the setup if they do go overseas. I think players who are very well established, like a Sia Khaleesi, he can go anywhere, and he's going to get picked regardless of where he goes. He could go and play in Germany, and he'd probably get picked. But I think he was a bit of a fringe player, and I think he kind of maybe even made peace with the fact that maybe he's not going to get picked, and decided, right, I'm going to go to the Premiership, going to make that move. It was going to be a decent money move, and look how it's paid off for him. It's actually put him so much more on the Springbok radar than I think it ever has been. So it's a brave move for him, and I think it's really stood out there. I think he's made the best of it. Apart from that, Sia Khaleesi, Trevor Nyakane back. No issue there. Trevor, played in the World Cup final, had a couple of massive scrums. Has been such an important player for the Boks over the past few years. That British and Irish Lions series, you think when he came off the bench, almost single-handedly won us the game with those couple of late scrum penalties. As a similar kind of thing to an Oxen chair. Salman Murat is an interesting inclusion. Ruben van Heerden, by the way, we'll talk about the standby list, has been called up as well. So we'll talk about him in a bit. But Salman Murat, for me, was always going to stay in the squad because we are short on locks at the moment. Archie Snyman officially back into the mix there. So it'll be interesting to see. I think we're going to see Eben Etzebeth and next to Frankie Moss as a starter. Archie Snyman probably off the bench. Salman Murat, I'll be surprised if he does face Ireland. I don't think we'll necessarily go sort of against them. Apart from that, no sort of real surprises. Apart from those sort of players at the bottom there. Johan Kroblock coming in. He's been on the radar for a while. Was told to basically bulk up a little bit. That he was a bit small a few years ago when he first got his call up. So I think that he has done that, to be fair. He has bulked up and he's a bit of a bigger player. And he's had a great season for the Bulls. A player which surprised me. I'm not massively surprised by Chaos Steenekamp. Steven Kitshoff being injured means we do need an extra loose head. And so he gets the call up. He's been involved in the system. Jan-Hendrik Wessels really surprised me. And I'm a bit of a difficult one when it comes into the Jan-Hendrik Wessels chat because I can understand the talent from a young age. We've seen him and the potential he's had. He's not done it yet for me, really, on this level. You look at his minutes, for example. I think it's like less than 400 minutes he played during the season. Peter Matanzima, for example, actually played more minutes than him. I don't think he's a phenomenal scrummager. And I think that his line-out work, for example, still is yet to make him a standout hooker. So you talk about utility players. I worry about him as being a player who's, because he's been moved around, is not settled into either position particularly well. And I think that could potentially be an issue. So I'm surprised a bit by that selection ahead of somebody like an Andre Hugo Fenter, who I think they highly rate. But I suppose again, number 1 and 2. I think the main thing is that it's a big squad. It's 39 players, and there are standby players. And I think that he's someone that they don't view as playing against Ireland. Might get a cap against Portugal, for example. But that for me, I think is probably the big thing. Is he's a bit of a project player. The last time he actually played, Jan-Hendrik Wessels, was actually Northampton in those quarterfinals, where he came off the bench 21 minutes. So yeah, I think it is a bit of a strange. That's probably the biggest strange selection with regards to somebody who's not been playing a lot of rugby and everybody talks about the outrage of Jordan Hendrickse when you think that how was he being picked as the second choice fly half? He played 1,100 minutes this season. Played almost as many minutes as Sinan Humber did. Whereas you've got a Andrew Wessels who's made the squad playing 362 minutes, doesn't make the 23. Is not within the top 2 best hookers at the Union, and not within the top 2 best props, because he's been behind Springboks as well as Karas Stenekamp for most of the season as well. So yeah, I think that's a bit of a strange one. Jasper Wiese is in the squad. He is banned currently, but will become available, and so will train with the squad. I think that he will be the starting number 8 when we take on the All Blacks, for example. I'll be very surprised if he's not. But Evan Lewis gets a bit of an inside run during that Ireland squad. So a nice opportunity for him as well there. Let's go to some of the comments and talk about what everybody's got to say over here. So Michael saying BJ Dixon's going to be a workhorse, the engineer. Yeah, I'm not surprised he's been recalled. He's been retained at all. I think he is Peter Steph du Toit-esque in the way he plays. Very physical, very mobile around that park. Incredible work rate. I think he ticks the box for everything. When the Springbok managers sit down and they talk about players' attributes that they want, I think that they basically just sum up Ben Jason Dixon. Hardworking, grafter. They talk about those battle stats. How many battle stats do you have? How many rucks are you hitting? How many tackles are you making? How dominant are those tackles? When you got the ball, how many hits are you making? Are you getting over the gain line, for example? And he is one of those players who I think just has so many battle stats and really good battle stats as well. Kenneth Mark says, what should Wilco Low do to be recalled? Well, he has been recalled. He's not in the squad, but he is in the standby list, which he hasn't been on the radar for the last few years. So it is a bit of a recall. Again, I suppose the question is who? Somebody's saying ahead of Trevor Nyakane. Trevor Nyakane can play loose head and tight head. We don't have another loose head with experience after Ox and Chair. Trevor Nyakane has played far more at loose head at international level than, for example, Karas Stenekamp. So I don't think it's necessarily a like-for-like replacement. So Wilco Low is really competing against Vincent Koch and Frans Malherbe, in my opinion. I think if you look at that, then I think you is he going to be ahead of Vincent Koch and Frans Malherbe on form? Maybe there's an argument, but the Boks management are going to trust the players they've got, the players they've always rewarded them, and Vincent Koch, Frans Malherbe, Trevor Nyakane won us the World Cup. So they've gone with those three. So if you go back and look, for example, at Trevor over the years, he has been playing more at tight head, especially for Racing, for example, and has been playing majority at tight head. But if you look at for the Boks, you go back to the 21-22 season, played primarily at loose head for the Boks, actually. In that British and Irish Lions head in 2021 as well, also played one at tight head, starting tight head, and then 2 off the bench at loose head, played loose head, and then twice for a season played at loose head. So he is as good at loose head as his tight head. So I think that he'll be in as the reserve loose head, to be honest. I think that's what we're going to do. Similarly to Thomas Toy, he can also play on both sides. And that's a really big asset that the Boks look at. If you look at a season, he has primarily played at tight head. I think he started just once at loose head for Sale Sharks, so he's been primarily at tight head. In fact, over the years, he's basically become a tight head, to be perfectly honest. Yes, he can play at loose head, but for the Sharks, the last time he played loose head was the last time he started at loose head for the Sharks. He hasn't basically in years and years and years. He's actually played more loose head for South Africa, ironically, than he has for the Sharks. But he is a loose head option, and that is a problem with Steven Kitshoff being injured, Karas Stenekamp being very young and inexperienced. So that is the backs over there. Not too much really else to talk about. Let's talk a little bit about the forwards. Let's talk about the backs, shall we? Because a very interesting a couple of decisions there with who they've retained as well as who they've included. Just trying to get them to the screen in a second. Right, those are your backs. Big news is that Lekanya is back, fit, firing, and ready. He was injured and has been declared fit and has rejoined the squad. Also rejoining the squad, Billy Leroux and Kurtley Aronsa and Kubas Ranov. So the standard, the World Cup winners are back in. Sash Fame Gomezuli has been retained, which I said he would be. I think, again, that versatility point of view, can play at 10, can play at 15, can play at 12, which way he's actually played the most. So So I think that's quite that's a non-surprise. Moyane Liebach being retained as well. A lot of people talking about the fact that Sima Masuka should be ahead of him. Again, the Springbok management does not just throw players in and out. They stick to their players. They stick to the players they trust. They stick to the players that they've been working with, for example. And there's a lot of loyalty in the Springboks coaching staff, which a lot of times you can say is a bad thing. A lot of times people say that you shouldn't have this sort of blind loyalty. But there's been that loyalty in the players that the coaches have had, which have really actually been one of their biggest assets. The fact that these players know that their coaches fully trust in them, which is how they've been getting every last little inch of performance out of them. So it's been an important part of this coaching staff's mantra is to back the players that they pick and to keep giving them as many chances as possible, because they want to provide an environment where a player like Asashfani Mngomezulu is not going to sit there going out and playing every single time thinking I'm going to get dropped if I don't play well. They don't do that. They sit there saying, we back you, we trust you, you will come good. And that is such an important backing to have as a player, where you're not trying to overperform all the time and as a result sort of do too much. You're in an environment, and he spoke about this actually in the interview, and if you haven't, go and check it out. It's really, really cool. He talks about how comfortable you feel in the environment and how much the players have worked to make it comfortable. So that comes with being loyal and backing the players that you trust in the Bok environment. So yeah, I think players who are interestingly have been retained, as I mentioned, Asashfani Mngomezulu can, as somebody mentioned over there in the comments, which I'm going to go to in a bit, can play a little bit of that Damon Williams role, 10, 12, 15, can play across that backline. Apele Fassi was rewarded for that game he had against Wales. I do think it'll be Willie LaRue come Ireland, but Fassi getting that opportunity over there. Kobus Reinach being called up, again, not too surprising. Moyane van der Berg being retained, maybe is a bit of a surprise. We've always loved to have 4 scrum halves in the squad, don't we? So, Faf de Klerk, Grant Williams, Kobus Reinach, and Moyane van der Berg all involved there. My guess is that it'll be a Faf de Klerk to start if he is fit. There are injuries, by the way. Injuries at the moment currently include Ben Jason Dixon, Edel van der Merwe, and Edel van der Merwe, Michael Mapimpi, and Faf de Klerk are the injured 3, which apparently are niggles, but could yet be in this frame for selection next week. So I think Faf de Klerk will probably start with a Grant Williams coming off the bench, maybe Kobus Reinach coming off the bench. If Faf de Klerk doesn't start, then I think Kobus Reinach starts. Still with the Grant Williams coming off the bench, what we saw during the World Cup, for example. So it's an interesting one. And but I think Moyane van der Berg, for me, will face Portugal. I think they really do rate him. When I've been watching the training and stuff like that, he's been very heavily involved. He's been working a lot with Zandila Stick when you've watched the warm-ups and stuff like that. So I think that he is somebody who they do rate. Obviously, a big name is Handré Pollard comes back into test selection. And Moyane Liebach, again, same kind of thing. You've got to back him. A year ago, Moyane Liebach was, taking to test rugby like a duck to water. He really was, to be honest. And you look at 2 games, you look at that semi-final, and you look at purely the goal-kicking part of it, and you think that he's had a bad game. Moyane Liebach was man of the match against Scotland, one of the most important games for us during the World Cup. Starts against Ireland, where we just came short. And, everybody's talking about, he's out of form and stuff like that. I don't think he's out of form. Yeah, he's had over 100 points in the URC. I think he had a poor quarterfinal. And the problem is, we've got to got that recency bias, don't we? That the last time he played, he wasn't great. Therefore, he's not in good form, which is nonsense at the end of the day. At the end of the day, that Stormers side are a different side when he doesn't play. When he plays, the Stormers side become one of the best sides in the URC. When he doesn't play, they tend not to be perfectly honest. So, again, a little bit of loyalty, I think, goes a long way with Moyane Liebach, and the Bok management are going to reward that. We saw in Chase the Sun, they sat there saying, we are a better side. Handré Pollard was available. He was available during those playoffs and was in the bench. And they said very simply, if we're going to beat France, we need to have something like a Moyane Liebach because of what he brings from the game point of view, more than just the goal kicking. And yes, eventually, you then go into a final and you go, right, Handré Pollard, and he kicks beautiful. We all know that. But to say Moyane Liebach has not been in form, he didn't even say he had a bad World Cup. I think it was wrong. I think he struggled for 2 games. apart from that, he didn't really put a foot wrong. And it's one of those things. Butch James, for example, didn't kick for goal in the 2007 World Cup. Didn't have to be. Percy Montgomery. If you had a Percy Montgomery, there would not be a single person talking about Marnie Liebach and his form from the World Cup. That's the reality. If Damian Willemse could kick a goal like Percy Montgomery could, and that's not a criticism of Damian Willemse, by the way. Let's not try and go that direction. I've got no issue with them retaining Marnie Liebach. He's been very good for the Boks and had some very good games for us. As I said, man of the match in that performance against Scotland. I mean, how important was that game? The best Scottish side, arguably, ever. And he scored 6 points during it and won the man of the match with that incredible no-look pass. Cross kick, for example, was fantastic against Scotland. Was decent against Ireland. Was very comfortable against Tonga and had some very good moments against France. Again, look at that taste in the sun, for example, and you remember the good moments that he had against France. And then was the early sub against England. That was when he played half an hour and was pulled. But he's had a good. I still think he's had a very good time for. I mean, he actually won Breakthrough Player of the Year last year for the player who got capped within the last sort of calendar year before that and up until the end of last season. So yeah, I think he deserves to be there, and I think that I've got no issue with that. And then we look at the rest of it there. Jesse Creel, I think for me was still started outside centre despite Lekanya being around the park there. I think that Kurtley Arts, Ches and Colby probably be the starting wings. I don't think there's too many other big surprises in this backs, for example. Let's go into the comments. And yes, Hingham and Vake is injured. So the players that were listed as injured, not available for selection: Stephen Kitsoff, Jean Klein, Lourt Diaga, Cameron Hanekom, which I mentioned yesterday when I did my video. So he was not considered for selection because he's injured, had a hamstring injury during that URC final. And so not available. And as well as I lost it now. Where are the injured players? As well as Jaden Henderson still injured, Henkel van Beek injured, Kanan Moody, as well as Damian Willemse, all injured and therefore not considered. So yeah, going to some of the comments over here. What do we have saying? There is no captain decision yet. I will ask Rassie Erasmus tomorrow during the press conference what the decision is for his captain decision or when they're going to make it. CP9 said, I don't think Mani will play against Ireland. Well, I mean, we know Andre Pollard's going to start. I'd imagine Pollard's going to start, would be my guess. But you never know. But yeah, so we'll wait and see there. Baylix is still disappointed there's no Tyne Green. Other than that, I think it's a good squad. So MC saying the new attacking style will fit Mani better than Pollard, but if we need to grind a win out, then put Pollard on. That's what's going to be an interesting thing, isn't it? You know, Tony Brown now in charge of that backline. And we definitely did see his influence against Wales. I mean, we tried to round out the 22, for example. We saw a couple of moves. So I think that he's also going to have a big say in the selection of the Tenzi ones. So, yeah. Brian saying Vilko's a better scrummager player than France, Vincent Trevor, and importantly, much younger. To say that Vilko Lowe is a better scrummager than Frans Malherbe might be one of the ballsiest shouts I've ever heard. Frans Malherbe, it was about not even that old, by the way. He's 33 years old. It's not that deep. Is arguably the best tight end in the world. So that's a big shout to say. And Vilko Lowe's been great, and he's on the reserve list. But to say that he's a better scrummager than a Frans Malherbe is a very large shout. Yes, he is slightly younger. He's 30 years old. None of those props particularly. Look, Trevor Nyakani is not going to make the next World Cup. I think he'll be here and it'll be a bit of a sort of passing over. But also, guys, I don't know if you guys have noticed or if you guys have heard, we're playing against arguably the second or third best side in the world next weekend. So this squad is not about 2027 purely. We've also got to win games, guys. We've also got to win trophies as well. It's a big squad already. There's lots of young players already. I still want to win games, though. I'm not going to... I mean, to sit there and say, okay, let's bin Frans Malherbe, let's bin Trevor Nyakani, let's bin Vincent Koch because, they're old and we need to stop the next generation. Crap. Absolute crap for me. We've got to still win games. We've got to still win trophies. I want to see us win rugby championships. We need to win more than just the World Cup. You know, we're good enough. We're good enough to win more than just the World Cup. Yes, the World Cup is the be-all and end-all, but why should it be? Why do we have the best players in the world and we have to choose to not win rugby championships so that we can win the World Cup? Let's start doing both, you know? That's what, for me, made the New Zealand teams of old so good, is they used to win everything. Let's start winning everything. And so let's not bin the entire squad simply because players are over 30 years old, you know? So CP saying, would love to see what Henkov and Blake will do in Test Rugby once he's fit. Ricardo saying, Jesse's too good at the moment. Ryan says, you don't need Indukani to cover Loosehead as well. You have Thomas Toy do that. Indukani is already 35. If he was on form, then I'd understand it. Okay, so if you're going to make that kind of statement, then I would like a full report of his season in France, where he has played, and I'm not going to lie to you, 760 minutes in the top 14, as well as 206 in the Champions Cup. So across his 20 games for Rassie this season, where he was a start of 75% of them, this Rassie, which by the way got to those quarterfinals, like a full-on report showing you why he's not been on form. I'm not going to tell you what his form has been like that because I haven't watched enough. I've watched parts of him this season, and when I've watched him, he's looked really good. And during the World Cup, he looked pretty good. So it's easy for us to sit there and say Wilco Louw's in better form because we watch the Bulls every weekend. We don't watch wrestling every weekend. Let's be brutally honest here, people. And look, if you do, and I'm speaking out of turn, then fair enough. But I'm going to make the assumption here, which I think is a relatively safe assumption. We watch the URC. Therefore, we watch Wilco Louw far more than we watch Trevor Nyakane. We're watching Ulrich Lowe far more than we're watching Siya Kolisi at Rassie. You know, we're watching Wilco Louw far more than Thomas du Toit at Bath. We are, you know, it's not even just it's also an accessibility thing, you know, it's easily available for us. So the last time Trevor Nyakane played for South Africa was the World Cup final where he finished the game for us at tight head and was very solid. You know, he played against Ireland in that game as well, and played against Scotland. So he played some important games during the World Cup. When Vince Scott got entered, he got the opportunity. Again, I look back at that British and Irish Lions series. When Trevor Nyakane has been fit and firing, he's very rarely let the box down. He's a phenomenal player. So, and again, you know, there are certain players who have always stepped up in a box jersey. Siya Kolisi have always been a different player when he's playing for Springboks than when he is at provincial level, for whatever reason it is. For example, you remember those calls about Siya Kolisi being, you know, shouldn't have been called up 2 years ago, and he then went to play for the Boks and actually won Player of the Year. So, yeah, I think it's tricky to make those sort of statements. How did unplay with the season before his injury? I thought he was much better. Kanyam looked this season a lot more like his old self. Who was I saying to? Somebody went and watched the Sharks, and they were just saying, he said, it was my uncle, who actually played for Zim back in the day. He was saying that when he went to go watch the Sharks, he absolutely loved watching the Kanyam live. He says, you don't understand how involved he is and how good he is around the park watching on TV than you do when he's live. He said his movement, his pace, the way he plays the game, he said it was absolutely incredible to watch and play. So I think he has been a lot better this season. I don't think he's moving Jesse Creel. Jesse Creel will start against Ireland. I don't see why you'd even think about dropping him in the form he's in currently. But if he does get injured, I am a bit more confident that we are getting the Lekanya of old if Lekanya does start in the midfield there. Little big media coach saying, I'd be happy with a bigger squad, send a separate away team to play the 2 games in Australia and the one in Argentina, fill it with young players who don't have Oz condition experience since URC started. No! We want to win this, don't we? Why must we sacrifice games against Australia? Not that I'm saying we're going to necessarily sacrifice them. I know it's Australia not the best side, but I want to win the Rugby Championship. Am I the only one that wants to win the Rugby Championship this year? Am I the only one that wants to go and beat Ireland to both tests? Thank you very much. And then go and beat Australia. By the way, those are our first 2 games. You go over to Australia and you win those first 2 games.